Most people know Truth BBQ because of the lines, the brisket, and the awards. But what they don't know is what it actually took to build it.
Everybody's like, it happened kind of quick. I'm like, those 10 years feel like 35 plus years.
Everyone sees the finished product, but no one sees the mornings that started before sunrise.
He slept on a cot in the restaurant in front of the counter, and he would sleep every 2 hours, rotate the briskets, and then go to his parents had a farmhouse, and he would go there and shower.
This podcast isn't really about barbecue. It's about betting on yourself.
You can see the finish line, so you know that there's going to be a gap between it, and your thing is just, how long is it going to take me to get over this hump? Because I already know the results.
What does it really take to build one of America's best barbecue restaurants? How close did they come to failing?
We stayed up until 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like crying on the couch, and we're just kind of like staring at each other like, what the F are we going to do?
If you ever had the dream to build something from nothing.
We're 11 years old, and I feel like we're still in that middle every day because it's like the job is never done.
You will not want to miss this episode. Take me back to the beginning. Tell me how you got started. Did you always want to be a chef?
No. That was like the very last thing on my list.
I think people are always so disappointed that this was not Leonard's dream.
I mean,
that's why it's a good story. I want to hear
so
it.
Good
I mean,
at it.
because a lot of people, they're super passionate or they wanted to do it their whole life. And so like their dream to do this.
No, I grew up in restaurants and grew up in hospitality. So I knew that side of the beast. And I mean, everybody that has restaurants or is involved in restaurants or any type of hospitality business, whether it's hotels, restaurants, whatever, they will all be like, don't do it. And it's not because they don't love it. It's the complete opposite. I think they love it too much, and it's what drives them, and you don't know when to put it down. So I noticed that from a very early age. My parents did have decent work-life balance, but they were the same way. Like, we grew up in small towns, both of us, and it was like, you gotta get out of here. So it was like, and we were during the same era of like, it's college or X. Like, there's only two options. So went to A&M to not get into restaurants, and
What'd you go to A&M for?
Biology.
Okay.
When you graduated, you moved home to help run the restaurants.
Yeah.
So your parents owned restaurants,
Mm-hmm.
and they still wanted you to go to college.
Yeah.
So that was always odd to me when like you have two entrepreneurial parents or just one,
Mhm.
and like you have to go to college. It's like,
But I think it was the boomer thing, right?
it is.
Like,
I think so too.
and anybody who was born in the 80s, late 70s, 80s, and early 90s, your parents were just conditioned. The culture was, you go to school.
You're a loser. If you don't
That's
go.
the mark
Yeah,
of like
you're
the
not
American
smart if you
dream
don't
at that point.
You're not
So
smart
now
if you don't go.
yeah.
You're
Like,
wasting.
you
your
send
money.
your
you almost
child
felt
to
like you
school.
weren't smart enough or capable enough to get into college, but that wasn't the fact. Like, it was either sometimes you just didn't want to go. Like, but that guilt, I think, of like feeling like you were dumber than the rest of your friends, like you just pushed through it. Like, nobody wanted to feel like that back then because
I went for a little while
Yeah.
because I was like, it's kind of the same thing. I'm going, well, maybe this is what you're supposed to do. I want to teach myself about business. Maybe I'll go here.
Man, I was dying to go to college.
Man, I lasted 3 or 4 months. It was terrible.
And my college experience wasn't bad. I work better under pressure. So of course I would study, not retain anything until the exam date is set. And then, 2 days before the exam, it's like dumping everything. It's just not healthy to work like that.
And so you do 4 years, finish,
Yeah.
go back home. What's the plan of that?
Worked with my parents for a little while. My dad got diagnosed with he was very far along in diabetes, but he didn't know. So he was developing cataracts, and so he needed to step away for a little while to focus on himself. So I jumped in and, worked around that and got a little bit more familiar with
What
that.
type of restaurant?
Just like mixed American. It was just like a kind of like a little bit of everything of a small town restaurant that you can kind of go get steaks or pasta or sandwich, like whatever, a little bit more elevated. So I never wanted to do it, but as a child, like growing up, it still looked really cool. So like I'd always beg my parents, before I was 16 to go in there and wash dishes or go in there and roll silverware, go in there and like, I had to like beg them because they're like, you can't really do it until you're 16. And then finally they were like, you know what, like I noticed that at the end of the shift, like part of their side duties was rolling silverware and they hated it. They just, it was like the end of the night and they all wanted to like go out or like get off work, do whatever. And it's 11 PM. And I would notice that the bus boys would do their side work. Like they would roll the silverware and they would take it, like they would put out a tip jar for like anybody that they would cover their side work for, like whatever, 50 rolls, 100 rolls of silverware. They'd be like, here, I'll purchase that from you. And I asked my parents if I could do that. And I did that like pretty consistently. It was like my little side hustle that I enjoyed doing, but it was a way for me to grab, like $15-20 in a night. And that was like a lot for me, under 10 years old. It's like, oh, wow, it's a lot of money. So I always wanted to be in there just because I think my parents were always in there and it always seemed cool. And it was always like a younger crowd that was working in there. So it seemed really cool. A lot of people were coming back from college and they were, working on their summer or whatever. So you always want to hang out with, when you're a freshman, you want to hang out with seniors. So it was like kind of like that mentality, I would say. But I could see how much work went into it. And, parents are always either at the restaurant late or having to go to the restaurant late or go to there super early. And my parents are like, yeah, you don't want to do that. And we don't want that for you. So you should go take your ass to school. And came back, and that was when barbecue really started booming, I think, in 2012, 2013. Aaron moved out of the trailer at Franklin's Barbecue in Austin, and John Lewis and Leanne Mueller and Allie were starting Law Barbecue out of a trailer in Austin as well. And they were kind of that big movement of like people waiting in line in the summer heat for like 3-4 hours was like just starting to take off. But it like got me super curious, and I went and had that experience and went through the motions. And I was like, man, it wasn't the food that got me. Like the food was really, really good. Like the food was, especially if you have craft barbecue for the first time, I'll still consider it like in my top 5 meals, I would say. Because it was like all the barbecue that I had had growing up as a child, and then this new version of it, I'm like, man, this is not the same at all. It's like when you have like nothing against a saltgrass steak, but if you grew up on saltgrass or like any of those like restaurants that have a nice ribeye, and then you go to a steakhouse, it's like, yeah, pretty life-changing.
This is a huge difference.
Yeah. But it was more the culture that got me, of like everybody standing in line and like talking about all their experiences, and then talking about times that they had barbecued and like family memories that they shared and like people that they brought to the restaurant. So I thought the culture aspect is what really drew me in. And then from there, I had an uncle, just like I tell everybody, everybody has somebody that barbecues in their family, and they usually are the best in the family. And my uncle was a welder he worked at BASF, and he welded a pit. And it was really, really nice. And I asked him if I could borrow it, and he let me borrow it. And I went and just got fixated on it after that. And it kept going and going and going.
Well, then what gave you the idea to open the first location? So you got the pit, you started barbecuing, started trying to master cooking.
I think it was, at that point it became a game, and it was like, get a job where I have like a 9 to 5, or like I'm in an office or something. Because like the dream was, I always thought it was super cool when pharmaceutical companies would come into the restaurant and they would wine and dine all the doctors, or medical sales. I was like, man, these guys are ballers. Like they're like, no, we got the check. Like so I was like, man, there's definitely some money to be. So that was the direction that I really wanted to go into, because I saw them like rent out private rooms. They would do it, and they would do the whole song and dance and like do the pitch. And I was like, man, that seems not too bad. That doesn't seem like that bad of a job.
I can't imagine you as a salesperson.
Yeah, because I don't think I'd be good at it.
No, it's hilarious. Like it's not your favorite thing to do at all.
But it just seemed like really, really easy money grab almost. Like it was like, man, I get to take these people out, show them a good time, and they just buy stuff off me. like that was my thought process of sales.
People.
And I like kind of weighed the two out. And at that time, barbecue, I was like reading all the books, like all the things, like, and it's like you read all the business books and like all those, like they're only guidelines. Like they're just telling you a certain guideline. There's not a specific formula. You have to decipher that formula and apply it to your business in order for it to work. And the same thing with barbecue. Like there's all types of cookbooks, but you're not going to have the same equipment. You're not going to have the same tools. You're not going to have the same, produce, proteins, whatever. So those all play a variable into the big picture.
And so on your first location, you decided to open. Why Brenham, or why was it the location that you chose? Like why in that part of Texas?
I bounced back and forth from Houston and Austin, and that's like there wasn't like a lot of craft barbecue in Houston at the time. And I mean, Austin.
Brenham was on the barbecue trail,
yeah,
or
it was
needed to be.
Yeah,
it was kind of like
there was like a gap between, all the places going to Austin if you were traveling to Houston. Yeah. So there's like a barbecue trail. If you're going up on 290. There's a lot of older places like Snow's and Louis Mueller's and City Market and all, but there was like a gap in between Houston and Austin. So there was that part of it. And then it was also like Austin was like Houston Rockets when Elijah won and Drexler and all like that championship. So not really a pond you just want to jump into immediately. So my fear was like just getting drowned out. Like these guys are already established and they've like started this movement of craft barbecue. And I just didn't want to be another person or another restaurant that was just like kind of in the mix. And the money was definitely not there. So
Brenham was affordable.
White
space. We call that white space now in business.
Was the location already there and you just lease it?
Yeah. It was a previously a barbecue restaurant, and he wanted to sell it, and it had been in the family for
it was a long time. It was something like 20 years, but you have to say like restaurant. It was previously a place that definitely served barbecue that the community loved.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like it's so different, especially like what you ended up going in there and doing.
I was about to say, how big is it?
Brenham.
No, the actual location that you picked.
Yeah, it's about the size of this room.
Yeah, it's tiny.
It's literally, I think, exactly the size of it. Like if you bump out that wall for the closet and just go to that back wall.
That might be the front dining room, yeah.
Right, like where the cameras are, this would be the front. There was 2 tables. Leonard would cut.
And you used to have like a cooking area in the back that's covered, and
there was a pit on the outside.
There was a pit on the outside with like a lean-to. So did he have a pit before? Because you brought your own pit.
It was all direct heat cooking, so it was like a big rectangle box. I think it was like probably 15 feet long or so, and it was a much different style of barbecue. So he would load like B&B charcoal on the bottom of the box, put the grates over the top. He would load it about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then put briskets on, and then they'd be ready by, service at 11 a.m. So it's like
hot and fast.
Super hot and fast, and like almost grilling to a certain point. So when I went in there, the transition was very rough, I would say, because.
So the first day you take over, what happens? Or the first day you open for business, change the name?
It was good. It was positive and negative feedback. You have some customers. I mean, Brenham was very, very small. If you would ask me now if Brenham was going to be the downtown and everything was going to be the way it is now, I would have been like, no, not a chance. Like it was much older crowd.
It felt so different back then. I mean, it felt like it was always going to be that. I used to run the register for him on the weekends because he couldn't afford to pay anybody. Brenham felt so different. Now Brenham almost feels like Cosmopolitan. I would move there.
Brenham feels hip
I would
now.
Enjoy
like there's a lot of younger
cool.
people. There's a lot of cool shops that are going in there.
Tons of cool little hipster restaurants.
My cousin has a hotel downtown under contract, a historic one.
Oh, I didn't realize you were related. I saw the post. That's a great place.
Yeah.
That's a great investment.
He has that, and he's doing a huge expansion on it. So it's going to be beautiful. He's amazing.
And that whole area where they're located, like.
He's a rock star. He said the same thing. It's just close to Round Top. Like it's outside Austin. There's just like no places.
It's like all the things.
There's a gap, and especially like if you want to stay somewhere, it's far enough from Houston where the scenery changes, so you get a little bit
And same with Austin. Like they like the drive.
Change. But then if you want to hop on the road and get to Austin, it's like an hour, 15 minutes away. So it's like,
I know.
So I see what happens.
I just told Laura, I'm like, I can't wait to tell Leonard that I'm ready to open another short-term rental property in Round Top.
Do y'all have one?
No. We did. We had, we bought a place called, so when we were in Brenham, I moved down here from New York City, which was big culture shock. And we had gone from like dating to living together, and we were living in Austin, and Leonard would drive to, we were living downtown East Austin. Leonard would drive to Brenham on a Tuesday night to start, or like a Tuesday to start. He'd receive the briskets, he'd trim the briskets, he'd season the briskets. So if you're a one-man band, which he was, you know, it takes you 3 days to prep for your days of being open.
And so you open Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, you know, for Friday, you're cooking, you're going on at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 4 a.m. on Thursday morning. So Tuesday and Wednesday were all prep, you know, seasoning, trimming, doing the whole thing, getting the briskets ready, but also ribs, sausage, pork ribs, beef ribs, pulled pork, turkey, the whole nine. And then he cooked it all, and he slept on a cot in the restaurant in front of the counter, and he would sleep every 2 hours, rotate the briskets, and then go to, his parents had a farmhouse like on the way to the Kinney store in Brenham, like past the Walmart, and he would go there and shower. So we were long distance. I moved down here, and I would always say that I was a barbecue widow, because I moved here to be with my boyfriend and like make a real go of the relationship, but he was in Brenham 5 days a week, you know, because he went from, you know, prep and cook straight through to service, and then Sunday night he'd get on the road about 6 p.m. And so we'd literally have dinner on Sunday night. He'd sleep for most of the day on Monday because he was so exhausted, and by Tuesday he's going back, right? And I was still working my job at Samsung. So I ran the register for him, because at some point I was like, well, I'm only going to see this dude if I go down to the restaurant and like hang out in there with him. And so then I started doing that, and I would stay at the farmhouse on the weekend so that we could like see each other. I'd be like, let's just go to dinner at 96 West. And he'd be like, I can't. I have to cook briskets. And I'm like, can't you just leave them? Like, can't you just leave them on the pit? Like, it's just an hour. And I'd be like pulling teeth. And so that Brenham to today and that Round Top to today is very different, but it introduced me to like all of Central Texas way of life. And I fell in love with Round Top. And several years later, the opportunity to buy a property came up, and it had a bunch of cottages on it that, much like Brenham, Leonard and I literally went in and by hand remodeled in the course of 7 months. We put like $250K into this whole, it was like a 3-acre property, 5 units, and we named it Hotel BB, Byron Botello, and ran it for 4 years. We just sold it a year ago. And I did tell Laura, I was like, I'm looking at listings. Don't tell Leonard.
She is too.
I know.
She's really trying.
Well, because we talked about doing something together for a long time, but we ended up selling it because we were like, man, Truth is growing. Houston is so massive, and it hasn't reached its peak. Like, we're not on the top of the bubble yet in Houston. Brenham went from, I want you to tell Shawn, because I actually don't remember the answer to this. Like, how many people did you serve your first day? But from whatever, like, you went from on your first day to where Brenham is now, it was all just so big, and we were expanding and doing the Texans partnership. So it was like, man, running your short-term rental, especially when it's Airbnb in a travel town like that, is just like running a restaurant. And we had to let go of one.
Yeah, focus
to feed the others.
It's super hard. Like I'm terrible at that. Mm-hmm. I try to always do too much, and that was my biggest downfall.
Same.
In my 20s.
Yeah, same.
So like, there's a better way for sure. And if you focus on something, it can usually become really great.
He's the focused one. Like, he's like, I'm disciplined and focused, but like, I have ideas. He was so focused on barbecue. Like, you could have stayed in the Brenham store forever.
Yeah.
Refining.
Eat, sleep. Yeah. Make barbecue.
He likes perfection.
Serve barbecue.
Yeah, like from food.
Well, for everybody listening, that's what an overnight success looks like. 10 years.
10 years.
Of eating and sleeping and breathing what you're trying to do, and then it will work out one day.
Everybody's like, it happened kind of quick. I'm like, in theory, it did happen kind of quick. I was like, but it feels
Tell
like
it to the guy that was sleeping on the floor.
And 10 years feel like 35 plus years. it went slow.
Yeah. So how many people ate at that restaurant the first day?
I mean, we got to think like, I think it was like, we would probably cook like 3 to 5 racks of ribs, maybe 5 briskets, like a handful of sausage. Like, we're not talking about.
Did you sell out?
100. No, it took a long time, like, to build up to that sellout model. And like, it was hard because they were so used to the barbecue that they had previously had, which was hot, fast, a cheaper cut of meat. So I'm not going to say it was drier. It was just not cooked fully. It was different style.
Like very classic.
Whenever you come in and change anything anywhere that people have been doing for a long time, whether it's food or anything else, there's always people that are mad.
Yeah, it makes them
don't like change. In real estate, it's everything.
Yeah.
Like the neighbors don't like something. Even if it's better, even if it's better for the city, even if it's better for the community, even if it's like better food, anything, people just don't like change. It's like there's going to be a handful of people that.
Yeah, it was familiar for them, and they knew what they were getting. So when started sourcing, much higher quality product that comes with much more fat internally and all the muscles, and it's very, very rich. So when you're comparing one to the other, one seems much more greasy than the other. So it seems too fatty. It seems too greasy. It's just not what they're used to. But it was.
You had to do a lot of education. I feel like that was your first 2 years in Brenham. Was like, it's the same but different. Like we're doing different things.
What was the moment that you realized it was, growing out of a passion project and turning into a real company?
Probably like a week ago.
I think
that thought process is still there. So it's always hard for us we always have to take a step back and like remove ourselves from it, because we still think of it as that 2-table restaurant. So you never feel like you need the things that you actually need. So you have to constantly remind yourself that you've outgrown that, or you're at that position that you're talking about, even though you don't actually feel like you're there. And I think that's a big hurdle that a lot of people, I mean, I think that's
so true, because you're like, when did it grow from a passion project
to when it started turning into like when you that had that feeling, it was always a real company.
We didn't have that he's right. Like we didn't actually have that mindset that like, oh shit, this is like a very large company with a large revenue, number. And I think that happened like 24 months ago.
Yeah, it was
we kind of woke
recent,
up,
I would say.
Yeah, it was very recent, because we
wait
always
a second,
were like,
I have how many people that work for me?
But you're not.
That was part of it. It was like, oh, we've got 70. Somebody let us have 73 employees. Why?
You just are so. And I'm sure you've been in this. It's like normal. Like you're in the growth phase, so it's normal to you, and you're just going through it. And then you just wake up. You're like, wait, when did we get all these people? Why do we need all these positions? Why do we? And then you're
the
like,
restaurant, the barbecue.
But then you also have to realize that you're coming a little unhinged, because you are pushed to the max.
Very unhinged.
So there's, I'm sure hundreds of different ways to do barbecue. What made you decide that like that was the exact way to cook it, or the type of smoker, or like explain that?
I don't think there was. And I think I found this out this past year, talking through therapy. When I was a child, I had crippling OCD, like bad OCD. Like I would wash my hands like until they were dry. Like I had to flip light switches on a certain like even numbers, would keep me in line.
I was pretty bad, but I wasn't to that point, but Gentry always messes with me. I got better over time.
Yeah. So you probably did the same thing that I realized that I did. So mine were like, I had to tie my shoes a certain amount of times, or like, I always felt like something bad was going to happen. I knew nothing bad was going to happen. And so as a child, I was like, I know this is wrong. I know this is like super weird when you're looking at me doing these things. So I would like try to change them. And I think over time, I decided to turn it off, but I turned it off in ways that people couldn't see it and didn't realize it. And then it rolled into other things. And then it rolled into barbecue, where it was like super, like it has to be right here, has to be in the same line as the next one, and the next one has to be right, and the next one, because barbecue is all it is keeping a perfect environment for 24 to 26 different briskets and cooking them all the exact same, even though they're all completely different.
And also that environment is never going to repeat itself.
No.
It's a different, perfect environment you have to create every single day.
So I think that OCD, like that obsessive compulsive, like it's got to be like this, it's got to be like this. It created more discipline and more structure in that, but I didn't realize that it was just, I never got away from it. It just bled into a lot of other things.
You know what? A lot of people I've interviewed, a lot of people that I'm friends with, a lot of really successful entrepreneurs actually have some form of like that or ADHD or just something that
Anxiety,
when they do, when they do
attacks.
find something, it's like
it's the channel,
you really
right?
like hone in on it.
Yeah.
And then you can do things for a long period of time when it's boring, when nothing's working out, and then you
I was
can just
always
like
so
work through it.
impressed. Like he was so, you talk about discipline all the time. He was so disciplined. And
That's how I was when I started something. I was like, I can do, like
Yeah,
I
he
can
could
do this
just
one
stay
thing
so
for a
laser
long
focused.
time.
Well, it's because I think you can see the finish line. So you know that there's going to be a gap between it. And your thing is just, how long is it going to take me to get over this hump?
Yeah.
Because I already know the results and I know the key that's going to get me there. So
that's everything I've always been good at. Like the path changes a little bit,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I still see the outcome.
Yeah.
And you pivot and things change kind of and figure it out. But it's kind of what I'm doing with the online thing. Like I know the outcome,
Right.
but it's like learning and different things change. But
Yeah, the part
the same thing.
The part that sucks is the middle part of
Yes.
like all the learning.
That's where everybody gives up. But that's where everybody gives
that's
up.
where
It's like
everybody
it's
gives
not
up.
working. I'm not doing as good as I thought I was. Like nobody likes it. It's like, and then
So
you
funny.
still keep going, and then you still push through it, and then you.
I feel like we're still in the middle, like people, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel that way. Like people wouldn't maybe look at Truth BBQ on the outside and be like, oh, they're still in the thick of figuring it out. They wouldn't. We're 11 years old. Last week, actually, we're 11 years old at the Brenham location, and we'll be 8 at the Houston location in January. And I feel like we're still in that middle every day because it's like the job is never done.
You can always improve.
You can always improve. In our business, there is something that we can tweak, fix, adjust, make better every single day. And that can be a functional or executional item, as it relates to cooking, or that can be our service model and the way we're relating to guests. That can be, our leadership model. It's everything. So we're still in the middle.
Stronger culture, stronger everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially in hospitality, like you said earlier, where like everything matters so much about how that when the experience when they go into the restaurant. And it's like, how do you recreate that all the time, all day long between every single customer that comes in there, which seems extremely hard. But, y'all let me bring the boys camp that I did, teaching them about life skills and financial literacy and a little bit of business, but mainly life skills. And what was cool is they got to see the morning like team meeting and then saw your general manager, like how he fired everybody up and how he got everybody motivated, and then announce like quick wins and then announce things you can improve on. And like, but everybody was, and then he's calling on people to answer questions about the company's history. And then he's, a lot of really awesome stuff. Like, y'all had a great culture there.
That's it. That's a new tool that it's called pre-shift in restaurants. So we've always done pre-shift, I'd say for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. We didn't do it in the beginning because we were so small. We still had that mindset of like, we're so tiny and this is what you see at like, this is what Underbelly does.
Yeah.
This is what's happening at Uchi, right? When you have these big staffs that you have to unite and get on the same page
Which
for
is
like
tough,
a service shift. But it was always kind of like, in the beginning it was Leonard and 1 or 2 other people and like me, we're not doing pre-shift. And we finally started doing it in Houston because we were like, oh, we need this tool. We need to communicate in a certain way with the staff. And not everybody comes in with their game face on. And so you got to help them sometimes.
Well, never, right?
You got to help them get there.
When you have that many people working for you, everybody has a problem that day. Somebody's getting divorced.
They're carrying
somebody's
something.
getting divorced. Somebody's getting pregnant. Somebody had a miscarriage. Like it's just
we're asking a lot of these guys.
It's just so much life.
I don't think most of us restaurant workers, owner operators, even corporate hospitality teams, I'm not sure that any of us in our industry that we rail against some of the injustices, that our companies can face, our employees can face. I'm not sure we were talking before COVID about how hard it is for our teams to do their jobs, meaning be the person, the main point of contact with every customer from every walk of life in every state of mood or what have you every day.
And no matter what happens in your personal life, always keep a smile on.
That's right. You're supposed to be so happy. And somebody, COVID really laid bare that everybody was having a hard time with something and everybody was angry about something.
Yeah,
and,
frustrated.
We want to say things like we're more united than we are separate, but COVID made it hard for certain industries to really feel that. And so when we started doing pre-shift, which was after COVID and it wasn't in relation to that, I do think we started as an industry of operators and owners and general managers and, leadership teams looking at our employees in a light of their job is so much harder than, that communication and that interpersonal aspect is so much harder than anybody thinks it is. And so when we do pre-shift, it's not just about getting everybody on the same page. It's like getting everybody ready for battle.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. And it was really awesome for the kids to see that. Really, really awesome. Because it's one thing to go into a business and learn to check out people and they're learning each job that somebody does, but it's another thing to see the teamwork and how the manager's trying to lead someone and all the things that go into that to get somebody ready for battle, which is the business day.
Yeah. And we have so many people that, not just us, all around the hospitality industry, because even when we were going to college and even before that, it was even worse before that. It's well, I can't get a job anywhere else. I'm going to work in a restaurant. And a lot of people don't realize now, that job that you're thinking is just an hourly job, whether it's a busser, whether, whatever it is, wherever you're starting. If you go into the right organization, there's so much. It's just like any other, any other job that you can grow into a position that you didn't even think was available. And that pre-shift is a little bit more about empowering them to use their voice of what they're seeing, keeping that culture and making them feel a little bit more involved. So they're looking at all the same things. If you're just in there pounding your chest during pre-shift, they're just doing exactly what you're telling them to do and not looking at,
just going through the motion.
They're not really looking at it, from their point of view as well, which might be a gap that you have.
We want them to have passion for it too. We understand, we talk about this a lot. We understand exactly what Leonard was just saying, that sometimes when you're passing through the hospitality industry, which there are a lot of, pass-throughs, it's a formative experience when you're younger. It can sometimes be a bridge when you're older if something's going on and maybe you leave your career, maybe you move, in my other line of work, maybe you have a child that's sick and so you're working part-time at night. There's a lot of reasons that I think the hospitality industry has a little bit of that negative connotation about it kind of being a Band-Aid. But, our generation and I think the culture in the industry right now is we're trying to develop these teams to be really passionate and see a really strong career path and growth opportunities. I was a waitress. My first job was bussing tables at a French restaurant when I was 15 because it was the only job my parents would let me have because it was 2 blocks from my house and I could walk to it and they could stop by anytime and make sure I was at work. And so I waited tables and cocktailed and bartended and did all these things through college. And I said to a friend that I worked with one time at an Irish pub, I've told you this story, but I said to a friend one time, I was about to graduate from college. And I was like, well, when I get my real job. And she had just gone through a divorce. She was really young. She'd been a dental hygienist, great career in healthcare and had a degree from dental school. And she yanked me. I was probably 21. She yanked me into the wait station and she said, little girl, let me tell you something. And she was like, a real job is a job that pays the bills. Don't come in here telling people this is not a real job. And she really schooled me. She really educated me. And I was like, too young to absorb the lesson, but I've never forgotten it. I never thought that I would end up in this life with him where I would be building this for my own team and saying like, you can be proud of this. And like, if you have other dreams and other goals, we're going to help you get there and we're going to support you. We're going to give you skills in here that you can use out there. But also anything you want in this arena, we can help you build and get you to management, get you to sales, get you to the creative side of the industry. If you want to do menu design and you're a graphic designer, and I think that's really important when it goes back to why we do something like pre-shift.
Yeah, you're not going to get the passion that you want out of hourly employees if they're just coming and looking at it as a job versus an opportunity to.
And they think that you
growth.
just think that they're there to fill a gap.
Yeah. Goes back to the old days where you thought when you graduated college you were going to get your real job.
Yeah, I'm still waiting
I
on
got
the
told.
real job.
I got told. And what's so funny is I wish that I knew where she was now and I could talk to her now, because I'd be like, wouldn't you know? But that thing has always stuck with me. And I think we both have reasons for what informs us about how we approach like our team and leadership and what we're trying to do to like mentor and encourage and grow. And I think it's all rooted in the idea that like this is such a valuable industry and people are valuable. So you've got to show them that.
As I was talking about how that AI job thing was happening, as we're saying, restaurants are one of the hardest business in the world. And it truly is. Like, I mean, me and Gentry go all the time. I have a lot of friends that are restaurant owners. And so I know how hard it is. And I also have run businesses in every other industry, and I couldn't even imagine like that has to be one of the hardest for sure. But it's funny how the new world will probably like these will become more valuable, the experiences and
look
and
at
the restaurants
Carbone,
and stuff. Yeah.
like major food group.
Just the experiences. I think that restaurants just become more and more, or like a customer service, hospitality based restaurant and certain style food. Of course, you're going to have like the fast casual stuff that's just going to be robots and like different, but I think people are going to pay a lot of money for the experience. If someone was crazy enough to want to get in the food industry,
don't do it.
Well, let's say they worked in restaurants and they want to start. Should they start with a food truck? Should they start with catering? Should they go and try to open a restaurant if maybe it's a chef or something?
People always asked this, and I think I've always thought that just anybody in general, not even being interested in going into restaurants, when we're talking about those trade schools or we're talking about electives like in high school and junior high, I always tell people that the younger generation going through school before they even get to college, like an elective, should be having to work in a restaurant, because if you wait tables or if you're a cashier for, even for a month, you really get a new perspective on life and you really slow down before you start climbing down somebody's throat. You really pivot.
But if they wanted to start, I think
any sales and customer service when you're young, like just good experience.
I think it's good.
Fear of rejection.
I think it's good in general for like communication
life skills. Yeah. Amazing. Like anything that you can do like that when you're younger is going to be beneficial forever.
But getting started,
in the restaurant business,
I think
if
where
some
we
young
are today,
some
we
young
would
entrepreneur,
say like go in with your lowest risk possible.
Yeah, lowest
right?
risk. But I don't know.
That's what we would say today. I think like years ago, we would have been like, you just start. You just go do. I mean, we're both.
No, years ago, there's different movements. So there was the food truck movement it's bigger in Austin. I don't really see it here in Houston as much.
It's different here. It's in like pockets and communities, but in Austin, it's still food trucks are still a major dining destination. The biggest question, we actually have 2 employees that are married that are also close friends that are leaving our organization in 2 weeks, and they're 2 managers
start a restaurant.
Us.
And I think that's how it happens a lot of times.
Yeah, they're from Houston, but they've been in Austin. They came back to kind of work with us for a while, and they're going to start their own venture. And, for them, they started thinking about a brick and mortar and ultimately landed, it's been a lot of time really thinking and planning for a brick and mortar, but ultimately, landed on the idea of a food truck. And I think for somebody looking to get into the business, it makes a lot of sense. Your entry cost, if you're crowdfunding it, if your parents are helping you, if you have a little money saved up, your entry cost to doing that and starting your own business is so significantly lower. And it is something that feasibly you could do on your own, like our friends are. They're doing it by themselves.
You're not guaranteeing a 5-year lease, and if you go
Right.
under in year 1, you owe the rest of the landlord's going to sue you.
And that once you get the operation going, that overhead is so significantly different. So I think, asking that question today, we would be like, manage your risk, know what you're getting into, because like anything, a restaurant is like a vintage or a classic car. It requires, like, the physical space requires constant maintenance, and something is always broken.
And I think it applies to different people. So a lot of people think that pop-ups are the way to go. I think pop-ups they kind of pigeonhole you because you have all this control over everything. You can make the highest quality product
like
that
that
you can do. You're in a bubble and you're in the finance time. You get to control what days you're going to pop up, when you feel most comfortable, when you're on your best.
If it's rainy, you don't have to do it.
Yeah,
right?
when you're at your best, that you always get to control that. So if you're controlling when you're at your best all the time, and that's what your food is reflecting, then you go from pop-up and then you go into a food truck or a restaurant where you have to be on all the time. That's what they're expecting. Every pop-up that you did where they had an amazing experience, they're expecting that Tuesday through Sunday now. So while it might work, it's a double-edged sword. It's a good way to grow and to see, like your PARs, your traction, your customer interaction. But it opens up the doors to a lot more, and then you have less control. You're adding in variables of employees. You're adding in variables of a building. How many customers are you taking in at one time? So it's very difficult to say what's a good entry. It's like she said, it's like, which risk do you want to take? They're all risky.
An important point that we talk about with our team a lot, because we've had a lot of employees come to us over the years and say, like, this is my dream. And it's not barbecue always. In fact, it's mostly not barbecue. We've had a couple of our team members come through and say, like, well, I want to open a barbecue joint one day, but most of them are looking to open fine dining, fast casual, maybe a really curated concept.
Whenever I walked in the back, I was like, I don't know what the hardest job in the world is, but it's already 100 degrees outside. It feels like 110 in Houston. And then you have a pit that's like 3 something.
The pit
and the guys are back there
125 degrees.
And you're like, holy shit, like this is hard.
It's
like
really
this guy's
hard.
Here for 10 hours.
10 hours. It's really, really hard. So I think
it puts it a lot of stuff in perspective. I was like, this guy is like.
But that's the thing. I think if somebody is going to I think restaurants are the only business. I really think the only business where, as an entrepreneur, your best path is probably not just do it. Your best path is probably go somewhere where you can learn the business
I agree with
first.
That. Yeah.
Do all the things, right? Like, okay, maybe you don't really need to bus tables, right? But go somewhere and work multiple positions and
understand food cost.
Go to your GM or go to your owner
everything.
And be like, I want to learn everything. Like, will you teach me? We've had a lot of people come through with that, and they've either gone on to be executive chefs at other organizations, in town. They've gone on to open their own places. They've gone on to go be partners in things in other states. That, to me, because we're always about managing risk now, of course we are. The egg got too big. We are always trying to protect it. But if somebody was coming, I don't think that really applies to most other industries. I think it's really in the blue collar space where it's like, you kind of got to learn the nuances. You gotta crawl before you can walk and run.
When they do start, what's something a first time restaurant owner underestimates, you think?
Insurance.
Oh my God. I spent 2 years unwinding. Thank you, Mari, who's never going to listen to this unless I send her the link, but 2 years unwinding what we had, what we needed, how drastically underinsured we were, and exposed to the world of just, we literally could have gone out of business at any minute just over insurance.
There's so many things, just like in your businesses, where it's like people that get started, they think it's just about the food, but all the other things that are around it that can affect you being able to do your job. At that point, all you want to do is create the best customer service that you can. That's the one thing that you control. But then you think that everything else is not as important because you're trying to build that part of the business. But all of those little things that surround that little bubble, that protect that little bubble, are just as important, if not more, in order for you to do that job. And a lot of people, including ourselves, overlooked a lot of those things. And, you learn lessons, and we have to have conversations with people that want to, get into restaurants, whatever. We're like, have you lined out this insurance? Have you lined out
I'm like
all
over
the
here,
risk factors?
one woman promotion, circus of please get an umbrella policy.
Yeah.
Please get a cyber policy. I think the other thing we underestimated that comes in your growth phase that we never saw coming, and I think most of us entrepreneurs don't necessarily have like a team of advisors, saying, hey, watch out for this. You don't necessarily have mentors. Was the first year that we were taxed on our profits as owner operators. And we were like, hey, this is,
takes all your money
this
out of
is
your account.
really, this isn't right. We were talking to our accountant. I guess this is like,
I went through that.
it was COVID years, it was like 5-6 years ago. We got our return back from our accounting firm, and we were like, oh, hey guys, we think you made a big mistake. And they're like, what do you mean? We're like, what do you mean? And all of a sudden we were on the hook for our restaurant profits, and we don't, we pay ourselves as employees, and we pay ourselves as restaurant employees. And that was a gigantic learning that we were not prepared for.
My first e-com business, that was a shocker to me because it was heavy on the inventory. So we were doing really large volume, and we had a ton of inventory. And I remember the first year where we grew like crazy, and I'm putting everything back into inventory because I'm keeping up with growth. And this is early 20s. And they sent me a tax bill, and they're like, this is how much you owe. And I'm like, I spent it all on inventory. It's but they're like,
where do you want that money to come from?
I was like, it's an expense. I spent it on inventory. No. You chose to spend it on inventory. That was profit that you bought more inventory with. I'm like, well, that's all the money in my account.
For very smart people, which the three of us are, and I think most business owners and entrepreneurs, there's a certain level of intelligence that they have. You get surprised by things that seem like they should be so black and white, and they're not really.
Well, go back to the stuff I'm teaching these kids, and my kid, it's a lot of the common sense stuff nobody ever taught you. Nobody ever taught you anything about taxes.
We don't have a tax class in high school,
or interest rates or whatever.
Finance class.
There's nothing. And so you kind of would expect that people wouldn't really know until they actually go through it and make a bunch of mistakes. And they're like, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore, or I'm going to pay attention to it.
That algebra really would have come in handy if there was a next course.
Yes.
After on how to apply it.
How much of your biology are you using in your
I don't think I use anything from. Well, I might use my college degree a little bit more than most because of my.
What did you go to school for?
Well, I got a journalism degree. So my life is in communication.
I feel like communication is probably the best thing you could do, anyways, because you're going to use it forever. It's a skill that you're going to use no matter what business you start.
It served me well, but when you're going into college at that freshman level and they give you those core competencies that they want you to take. It's shocking to me that in the last 2 decades, the institutions haven't changed and said, we really need to be graduating people with financial literacy.
I think AI is going to force a little bit of the change. I think it's not going to be so, we're going to make you take all these just random stuff so we can drag it out forever.
I did not need that PE course.
I think colleges turn into more of very specialized lanes. And so when you pay for something, you're like, I'm going to get this skill.
Yeah.
Instead of just all these general studies and then not really knowing. I think you're going to have
I don't think specific. When we were doing it, and especially you doing the stuff with the kids, when we were going through college, it was you had an idea, and it was I think I know what I want to do. So here are all these classes, and then you got to figure out.
But unless you were going to be a lawyer or a doctor,
there was no path.
Nobody pressured you to be this is the time that you got to grow up and make decisions. I mean, my brother and I changed our majors so many times.
Everybody does that.
You know what I mean?
Everybody I knew did that. It's because you don't know. And, I tell that to a lot of people too, is it really shouldn't be that way, because when you graduate, when you're 18, you have no skill. And so how do you expect somebody to know what they want to do? They do nothing.
You also have no awareness of life.
You're starting over from zero.
You haven't been exposed to
If you would have pitched me on finance when I was 16 to 18, I would have been like, oh yeah, I will 100% go to school for that and I will do that. You don't
But you're
realize
good at finance. You would have been really great
you
at
don't
that.
realize any of those, like any of those jobs that you think, like you're not thinking about that at 16. That's why I think the thing that you're doing with the kids is good, because it opens their eyes and they're like, oh, this is what they do. This is the path that I can
just
take.
real life stuff that'll benefit them forever. And I think it'll give them a better shot at when they're 18 of knowing what a general idea of like, oh, you know what, I'm more interested in this and I've learned all these skills. And so it's like, actually, you know, I think I do want to do this for life. So I don't know. It's hard to expect an 18-year-old to know when the traditional system's really set up to
summer
like
job comes in, that after school job comes
I
in.
mean,
Like
working early and working for an industry that you would like, that you like and you want to get into. I tell parents that all the time, like, my kid's kind of lost. I don't know what he wants to do. He kind of thinks he wants to do real estate. I was like,
let him get a job.
Yeah.
Well, I said, tell him to go work in real estate. Tell him to go work for, I said, the best thing to do is work for a smaller company that you can be either close to the top management or the owner or, and that is the absolute best way. And then they're going to even figure out if they like it or not before they go to college. And then if they do like it, they're going to figure out the roadmap to do it, what not to do, because there's probably a handful of things that that company that they see is like, oh, you know, I could do these 3 things a lot better. And so you just get so much experience if you work for a small company. If you go work in the mailroom for a Fortune 100 company, that's like, it's not going to really do much for you. But if you work for like a small company, like you say, you have all these people that come in and they're like, hey, I want to teach me everything and I want to open my own restaurant, and like they're learning everything about the business.
We also have people come in that like, they come in and they're like, well, I want to work on the line. I really like dealing with people. Maybe they want to be on the cash register. Maybe they want to be a bartender. You know, we often find in our organization that once they've kind of gotten culturally acclimated and, you know, they're really enjoying their job at Truth, they start thinking about like, I think I want to go work in the kitchen. I think I want to learn to cook. Or really the longest wait list in our company is to get into the pit room and have the hardest job. Everybody wants to work in the pit room. They find it like,
when I walk through there, I'm like, these guys have the hardest job in the world.
It's fulfilling.
You know, and I'm sure like, no, you definitely have to like it.
It sucks.
It's 100.
It sucks.
25, 130.
We did a video with Bon Appetit, came and shot for 24 hours at the restaurant from start to finish. Like went through a cook. I think they were about 8 hours in, and they're like, we gotta take a break. And they're like, why do you like this? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, why do you like doing this? I was like, I don't. They're like, so why do you do it? I was like, it's like cross country running. Like, I don't think anybody actually enjoys training for marathons and going through marathons. Like
the outcome.
Yeah. It's like when you get done at the race, it like feels very fulfilling. Like you finish a cook, you have a line out the door, you get to see the product, you get to see the interaction with the customers of like them being super excited about being there for the experience and trying that food for the first time. And then it's like, oh, all that work did pay off. So while it is very hard, it feels very validating at the end of it, but by no means is it fun at all. Like,
how do you divide responsibilities today between you and her? What's the roles?
She's more the communicator. I'm more of the hands-on. Like I like to,
you're the visionary.
Yeah. I like to be able to do things. Like I'm very bad at delegating because I want to be able to like go through it first and do them and know that I can do them.
Yeah.
And it also helps me.
I had a hunch that was the case.
Yeah, it helps me.
I do most of our like business operations, and it's the stuff that for some people like is going to bore you to tears. And like for him, it would be like kryptonite. Like he doesn't want to talk about HR or, you know,
I hate that shit so much.
Yeah. Like our benefits program, our 401k, our business insurance. For me,
hate all of it.
And I think we've talked about this a little bit, but like, I'm big on strategy and everything that I do. I'm a natural type A. I'm very planful. So those things kind of naturally, and with my corporate background anyway, they're not the most entertaining, but like I actually do get a lot of satisfaction out of working on that part of the company because I like really good infrastructure. I like really good organization.
You're like Gentry. She's opposite of me. She plans everything. She's really good at operations, like just like the detail stuff to like set up systems and stuff like that.
The communication like has to go hand in hand with that.
I hate it.
You know?
Yeah. I'm not good at that stuff. And I've learned that over the years. And not that in my 20s, I had to do everything because when you first start, you kind of have to do everything. But that's where I got capped out. And that's where I love business so much, but you start not liking it because you're doing all these things that you're like, I don't really like to do any of this stuff, but you end up doing stuff you don't like.
So
And then when I
funny.
got out of that and I didn't, I'm like, oh, I love everything again. This is great.
Well, when we were growing, and I was always behind the scenes because I kept, I was working on my own career in the corporate world and doing different things. My background is PR and marketing and like product launch. So I would always just like help him. And then we got to this inflection point where we just grown so much that it would be like, oh, we need a website. And then it would be like, oh, we should probably add this. We should probably do that. And then we started doing things like working on our packaged goods line, like selling our products outside of just like the experience in the restaurant. We started doing different things that naturally fell a little bit more into my wheelhouse and like covering, I think, those gaps so the business could grow. But like for Leonard, his thing is it can't like run without like a visionary, that's behind it, that's constantly reminding everybody like your big thing is like the why, and I think my big thing is the how, and then stitching that together and working on that like brand story and working on, what does the organization look like from the outside is kind of how we ended up dividing it. But we fell into it and it was very imperfect and painful in the beginning, because we're still just like chipping away at it. And like you learn to date and then you learn to like live together and then you learn how to like be married. But like learning to do all those things and then learning to work together is a totally different ballgame.
I don't know what it would be like if me and Gentry worked together. I always tell her I could never come into this business. I mean, she's had it for 15 years. It's just not something I would ever do, nor she would want me to do. But I always tell her, I'm like, down the road, I was like, you're so good at everything I'm not good at. If we ever had a business together, it would do really well. I'm telling you. Because it's kind of the same situation. What did it actually end up costing when you first opened that first, I'll call it a restaurant, but like the Shack in Brenham, the 400 square foot, 500 square foot building?
Well, there's the price tag on the land.
No.
Did you buy it?
Yeah, eventually, but it was lease owned. Like,
okay. Hey everyone, real quick, I just want to let you know this podcast is 100% independent. No ads, no sponsors, just real. If you're finding value in whatever we're doing here, the biggest help that you can give us is hitting subscribe and sharing this with someone who you think needs to hear it or someone that it will provide value to. That's how we continue to grow. And if you did that, I would really appreciate it. What was the startup cost? Did you just use your own capital?
It was, yeah.
Bought the pit, had your uncle weld
No, that pit was found on Craigslist and it was built in Houston. It was in Cleveland, Ohio. That pit was $2,000 and it was, I mean, you can buy that pit today and back then it's gonna be $25,000+.
Yeah, nice.
And that was like one of the one pit makers that was making stuff back then. And it just happened to be he was out of Houston. So I was looking for that pit and then found it in Cleveland, Ohio. And it was this elderly lady that was it had been on Craigslist for a long time.
Her husband had passed,
Yeah, her
right? She wanted
husband-
to let go of it.
Yeah, he retired and he wanted to go into like competition barbecue. And he'd only used it twice and he passed away. And we got up there and it was like all the grass was overgrown over the pit and it wasn't rusted or anything. It just was dust, like it just hadn't been used. It was outside. And she was like, I was literally contemplating scrapping it for metal this week and just cashing out on that. And that was a cool story because she just passed away like 2.5 or so years ago. So that pit, she got to watch like the whole. That was,
and it's still in service today in the Brenham location.
It's in front of Brenham. So
but what else? I mean, you kind of
did you just save up a little bit of money from working with your parents?
Yeah, I was saved up, and then most of the stuff was like I always joke with Laura when she's doing like that, tearing stuff apart and like painting. It was all that. Like,
I mean, I bet you started Brenham with like literally
$5,000.
$5,000. You didn't. You have to understand Brenham early days.
No,
all the equipment was like, I mean, it was like a Home Depot refrigerator that was 10 years old that came from, it like, it's funny because I don't think you can do that now. I think that you could do that in another really rural small town. Like somebody's going to have that opportunity, but it's so much rarer. But like the stove was probably 10 years old. The fridge was probably, you started with a stove, a fridge. How much did it cost to get that equipment that you had on the line? It wasn't much, but like,
I think it was purchase used, so probably like $2,500, $3,000 maybe.
yeah, I mean, the tables and chairs were salvaged.
Everything was refurbished. So
didn't do anything to the building. His mom painted it. His mom painted the inside. You guys painted the outside.
Yeah, a lot of cutting,
we would just collect
painting and,
things
like,
over
yeah,
the years
just-
and like hang it in there. You know, we didn't have things on the tables for like napkins and stuff. We would just find it.
Was there ever months, you know, at any point where you didn't think you were going to make payroll?
What do you mean?
We didn't have payroll.
Yeah. Yeah. Back then there was no payroll. We only had like one employee.
He still works for us.
Yeah, he still works for us.
What about during COVID?
COVID was scary, but it helped us learn a lot. Like, because we're talking about a restaurant that wasn't open past 4 p.m. ever. We're talking about a restaurant that didn't do to go ever. Like,
and also Houston was only starting its second year. We'd only been in business for literally exactly 12 months.
We didn't have any of the data to go back on.
You still owe the lease. You
right. We weren't getting like any, our landlord wasn't negotiating, but we were still on the hook for everything. But like also COVID was interesting because we had two very different businesses all of a sudden. Like they were the same product and they were the same name, but they were two incredibly different businesses. So like,
it forced us out of our comfort zone.
We didn't know how Brenham was going to do.
It was all the things that we didn't want to do. Like it was always like, we want the customer interaction, going through the line, trying to bite a brisket for the first time, eating it in the dining room. So, it's not being packaged up and they're taking it home and the experience changes. So we wanted to be able to keep all of that in-house and control all that in-house as much as possible. And then COVID hit and
that was out the window.
You can't do that. And luckily for us, people were super loyal to barbecue during COVID because it was a familiar product and everybody knew that it held very well. And then when we started to think about it, we're like, well, we're already wrapping up everything in butcher paper when people come through the line if they want it to go. So it forced us to do curbside. It forced us to do online ordering. It forced us to do, we had to pivot. The whole business changed.
The whole business changed like almost overnight. I remember the day, everybody remembers the day, we were pretty much all sitting in front of a TV somewhere, right? And it was like roughly like March 13th. And Leonard was at work and I was working for Brenham at Ways to Well. I was his VP of marketing. And so I was kind of already in the thick of it on the health side, right? Because Brenham was one of those early visionaries that kept seeing the gaps 10 miles before everybody else did. But Ways to Well had decided to send everybody home like a few days prior. So we were kind of already starting that work from home space. And I was sitting on our couch in our brand new house, by the way, our first flip that we have spent all of our money on. I've cashed my 401k out for the whole 9. And we'd been in that house for 3 months.
Yeah, I think
we'd been in the restaurant for 12.
When that like announcement came on TV,
I'm like sobbing in front of the TV.
Like came out was like, oh fuck. Like
you came home from work really, because we were still sellout model. And everybody died off in line. So you came home from work super early that day. It was like 2:00. Normally he would get home like 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. And I'm like crying on the couch and we're just kind of like staring at each other like, what the F are we going to do? We stayed up until like 4 o'clock in the morning working on a website, which I had always led teams building websites and I had passing knowledge of like WordPress and Square, but we did it. And like Leonard said, the whole business changed overnight. But I feel like the first 5, 6 maybe months of COVID were like pins and needles, And then all of a sudden, I think we just hit our stride. And we didn't talk about it for a really, really long time because our story wasn't common in our space, And so we were just always like hyper aware of what our friends in the industry were going through. We were hyper aware of concepts that weren't able to pivot as easily as we are. Barbecue saved us because for most of America outside of Texas, barbecue is a carryout model. Yeah. It's not the way we treat it here. And Texas has been eating barbecue since the dawn of time. So they had no problem remembering what it used to be like. But that was a really interesting thing because we ended up redoing the blueprint, not on purpose.
It was forced, so it was scary. Like,
it was just like we just kept chipping away at, and it wasn't even like we were able to sit down and say like, okay, what's our strategic plan?
I mean, for the first
You just had to do.
6 months, it was like, is this going to be it? Like,
Yeah.
I think for like,
Will people show up
yeah.
today? I remember one time I was at a party, and a couple years after COVID, and I think as a restaurant owner, but I think many business owners, many people, we all have a lot of kind of PTSD from COVID. And so it's still like a sensitive subject, a tough subject. And I was at a party, and Misha Reyna and Ali Shell came up to me, and they were like, we used to drive to Truth during COVID and tell our families that like we were going to get dinner for everybody and pick it up curbside. And they would stay and sit in the parking lot so they could have like a mom break for like an hour, and they would order an extra tater tot casserole, and they would sit in the car and just hang out, the two of them, and just get a break from their kids because everybody's trapped in the house, and just like have a mental health break and eat their tater tot casserole, and then like go home, feed their families, have the barbecue, do whatever. And it's things like that that make you realize that when you're fighting so hard for like every single day, we never got a chance to stop and think about what maybe we were fulfilling for people on the other side of that. We were like, did you wear your mask today? You know, is somebody afraid to come in here? Is my staff protected? Can we afford? That was when we started worrying about, can we afford to make payroll?
Yeah, that was a lot of restaurants.
When we were taking payroll out of, we were paying D $10 an hour out of a tip jar in Brenham. We had no idea what we were doing, and that was how we did it. COVID was really when we had to go through that.
Yeah, it's scary because then you realize that you're responsible for families and people.
Yeah, that was the big
like,
thing for us. We wouldn't furlough anybody. We didn't lay anybody off because we were like, we were watching our friends have to make those really tough decisions. And the flip house that we had at the time, several super popular restaurateurs in Houston lived on the same street and all had super popular restaurants in the Heights. And it was like the first weekend. So the announcement had been made. All the restaurants, the whole world had been dealing with the shutdown and these new kind of ways of living for like 4 or 5 days. And we're kind of commiserating in the middle of the street with all of our roadies because that was what COVID was. And you talked outside in your front yards type deal. And, these guys were like light years ahead of us in longevity, legitimacy, branding here in Houston. Their institutions still stand today and are, just as awarded as ours are. And we were standing there when they were telling us, like, we had to let go of 300 people today. We had to make these decisions. And at the time, we only had like 30 staff max. We hadn't come to that decision yet. We were still kind of thinking like owner-operator. Our Brenham location was staffed by people in our Houston location that would like rotate and go up there. His dad, would always be the one to kind of run the shift and like unlock the doors up there after we opened Houston. So we knew Big wasn't going anywhere. But we made this really conscious decision, like we just couldn't bring ourselves to tell somebody that they weren't going to be able to feed their family. We couldn't do it. So we made this decision where we aggregated everybody's hours to make sure that everybody got somewhere between 20 and 25 hours. And it was the best we could do, but nobody would have to lose their job. But that COVID is kind of like it like a Boys to Men situation. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it made us in a lot of ways as far as like business decision-making, hard choices.
So today you still have lines out the door. I was there when it opened, still a line all the way outside. And what percentage is like online versus
actually that
like
varies.
Physical people coming in the store.
There was a point
or takeout, I guess. I don't know. Online
yeah.
Or
I mean, it's but like takeout curbside. There was a point where it was
last week it was like 9%.
Right. There was a point where it could creep up to like 35, 40%. And that was,
Is it like certain days, certain times a year or something
that was in the years post-COVID where it was just still
people were
so
still
super
not all the way
popular.
back to work.
But also we made a conscious effort to dial it back. We wanted the service to be there, but Leonard's core thing was experience.
So we still control online for the most part. So that way it still stays fresh. So there's usually like 15 spots per time slot.
Okay.
So that way it's like going in and out, and you're not like forcing, it's still when they're getting done cutting it, the people are pretty much pulling up. So it's like in, out, in, out.
That was the biggest thing. We had to figure out how to do it to keep
logistics.
Yeah.
Leonard's big thing was like, it has to be the same as the experience when you get it on your plate. And it took us a lot of years to refine that.
Yeah, but if you leave it wide open, then you take the risk of like just running this to-go guy ragged. He's cutting nonstop all day. Then it bleeds into the customer experience.
So when they come in, if you run out of something,
you really, and that's always been our biggest things. It's like you really have to, it's a fine line you have to dance with how much
offering the service, but not changing the business.
Yeah, how much you can't always think in dollars. Like if you think in dollars, something's going to get destroyed along the way because you're just thinking about cranking. That will end up eventually coming as long as you stay consistent and the quality stays the same. So if you take one above the other, it's a risk.
But to your point, we do have seasonal times because obviously like you get to the holiday season, you have a very large volume of like carry out. We kind of cover it under carry out. And then there's another category, for us that's catering. You do have the seasonality. And then, your Mother's Day, your Easter, we're closed on Easter. So we have a large volume going out like the day before.
Yeah, which makes sense.
But we manipulate it at the end of the day. And I would say that's the thing that we do by always being in the business is we're consistently manipulating everything because brisket's not like a burger. That's what Leonard's kind of honing in on. Burger Bodega, Trill, like they've got this formula, 98% of the time they're going to hit that formula at 100%, right? We can't do that. We have to build, Leonard spends his time building in like that muscle memory for our team of like everything changes all the time. So like you have to be able to pivot in the moment, make these decisions, understand muscles, fat, how that happens with the heat. Some of it you're going by feel. It's like medical almost, So we manipulate everything a lot to consistently make sure that if you ate at Truth last week on a Tuesday, and then you came in, this week on a slammin' Saturday with a 3-hour line, you're having the exact same experience.
How do you deal with the fluctuation of like the inflation and the meat prices have gotten insane? And so how do you...
We cry a lot.
I know. It's like, how do you do it in a way to where you can still make money, but then also still... It's very hard for a business to raise prices sometimes because your customers are used to a certain price, but at some point you have to, or you can go out of business because you can't pay anybody.
I mean, there's 3 ways to skin that cat, but Leonard's going to talk about what he does with beef, and then I would say when I was in there, I'm like, man, it has to be insane right now. Just at Central Market, I think a fillet is like $50 a pound now. Ground beef is $9 a pound right now.
Recently,
think
$9
if it's organic, I think it's like 14.
If you get bison, elk, or venison, it's 18 to 20 bucks a pound right now.
It's byproduct. Like it's pieces that they can't even use, and they're making a ton of money off of it right now.
Tell him about Restaurant 365 because that's one of the pitches that.
Oh yeah,
one of the kids. The
just that's huge on our beef pricing.
Yeah, being able to. I mean, USDA puts out all of their information, so you can track it. So everybody has to stay in line with. Let's compare it. Like if
distributors,
if there's a main, person that makes shoes, so Nike, Adidas, Reebok everybody's getting from the same factory. They still have to stay in line with where they're getting the shoes. The same thing with beef prices. So you can track those trends on USDA of where they're going to be at and see where your distributor is at on pricing. And on a smaller restaurant, you can definitely shop around. You can shop pricing. You can go and say, well, I don't want to use this brisket because it's 15 cents more, so let me go to this one. But with a bigger one like ours, we have to buy blocks, which makes it difficult. Like I'm sure
you also have to have a certain quality of meat. You can't just go spend less and get a less quality meat because it's not going to taste the same in the restaurant.
Yeah, so it's a lot harder now post-pandemic. What the pandemic triggered was nobody was buying beef during the pandemic because the prices skyrocketed. They laid so many people off from the packing plants. The price of corn went up, which affected the cows. Everything affected everything. Gas went up. Everything messed everything up. But then when COVID ended, prices dropped, so they had to slaughter more cows than normal, and they had to kill off a majority of the herd, and it takes 2 to 3 years to get those cows back up to where they can, make other cows and be processed. And so we're feeling that now.
I was about to say it feels.
And there's like
I don't want to say higher than it ever has been, but it's high.
We're feeling it now because they had to hold those cows to get them back up to that slaughter, age and weight. And what they're doing now is they are holding the cows even longer, so they're putting on more weight. So the quality is dipping. So the muscle, density versus the fat, it's not the same as it was before. There was a sweet spot before COVID where, the cows were grown to this age, to this weight, they were slaughtered, and this is the quality that you got. It was very transparent of prime, choice, and select. Now, they've all kind of blended together. You're not really still getting a true prime product because even the prime products on the beef side the cows are getting too big. So the fat content is still there, but it's not as big as it was previously. And it's just thrown everything off.
How do you deal with it in the restaurant though? So
to your point,
how often does it change? Does it change by month? If prices are going up, or by week, by day?
2 weeks.
Yeah, bi-weekly. Usually they put out.
And so you can't just change the prices every week. So I know. So you just eat the margin, and
you have to. I mean, luckily,
it's a loss leader, right?
The barbecue, like our community is pretty tight. Like I can call Grant Pinkerton, or I can call somebody in Dallas. I can call somebody and see what they're we all stay within the same price range. But in order to do that, you have to do yield tests on the brisket once a week. So you have it in the package, you weigh it, you trim it, you weigh it, you season it, you weigh it, then you cook it, and then you weigh the final product. So you know how much you're yielding from start to finish.
Like what your true cost is.
Yeah, your true cost on that. And then you compare the numbers versus what you're purchasing it at. And you just kind of just try to dial it in. I mean, you can't really raise brisket.
But I was about to say to the point on consumer facing pricing, it's a double-edged sword because people think, even Texans, that brisket is supposed to be cheap. And it's just not. It's not. I mean, it was eons ago, but it's not. So craft barbecue, because of the labor aspect, that's another level.
2 days to make a brisket plus the beef price.
Right. Like we could charge a different rate if we were, if we cooked in the vein of like hot and fast, which is a popular way to cook, in kind of East and Central Texas. But, so you got the labor aspect of it. But then, the third layer to that is like he's talking about with Grant, or like if you think about Feegis Barbecue, any of our colleagues in this space in Houston and in Austin and in Dallas, we're all looking at each other's pricing. We're looking at what Corkscrew is charging, because customers are expecting us to all charge within the same range. So we're kind of in this unofficial, handhold together in the industry. You might go somewhere and see brisket for $40 a pound. It's not unheard of. And it's what it probably should be priced at.
Yeah, it should be priced.
We'll never be able to price it above $37 a pound. So the management of that comes down to what he's talking about, like with the yield tests, managing your distributor, staying up on what's going on with the USDA so that you have bargaining power and negotiating power, right? For us, luckily, the blocks that we're buying gives us a small, area of negotiation, but that's where then we have to focus on the menu mix, which is even harder for us because there's a lot of barbecue joints out there that are serving like a lot of great different types of barbecue dishes. You know, like Lori and Lewis in Austin is a phenomenal barbecue joint, and they serve all types of proteins and different kinds of barbecue. But for us, we're known for brisket. So like we don't get to manipulate and kind of say like, okay, we're gonna reduce. I'll never forget this. Like this one of the smartest people we know, Chris Shepard. He said to me like a year ago, we were talking about brisket prices. He's like, Abby, come on, you guys can cook less brisket. And I'm like, you go tell Leonard that.
We've actually tried.
And people, you go tell Leonard that we're going to cook less brisket because people, that's what they're coming for.
They get upset. And it's
you know,
hard.
so we don't get to manipulate the menu as much, but we do offer other things.
How do you decide what goes on the menu? Like when to bring in something new? I mean, outside of like the staple stuff.
That's the hardest thing because it's like kind of pigeonholed us because it's been our gift and our curse. But now we like the whole idea was like to come into Houston and then you get off the airplane, you need barbecue, you go to Truth. So you see videos of,
but it's also the people that do it like really well and just simple there's a thing to that too, because you're not trying to have a million things. You're just doing these 5 things.
But I think that's the thing. Like he's kind of talking about like, it can be a little bit of a stopgap for us because people trust us with tradition, you know? Yeah. Truth is traditional Central Texas style barbecue. So they trust us with, when I go there, I'm getting the hits that I grew up on. I'm getting the tater tot casserole. I'm getting the collard greens. I'm getting the mac and cheese. You know, they have this level of expectation about that consistency that we've built over time. I always get the brisket and the jalapeno cheddar sausage. I never miss beef rib Saturday. So that makes it challenging for us to roll something out because it takes a really long time for them to adopt it because they come from their favorites. They have their repeat orders. But over time, when we've added things like the smash burger or the banh mi or like fried chicken, it's always come from a place of like inspiration and something that we really want to eat. And if we like it, we're like, well, we know, so they're going to want it because it's something we love. We won't just like we won't put pasta salad on the menu because it's springtime. You'll never have that experience at Truth. But do we think that you should have like the best fried chicken as part of your Sunday barbecue dinner? Yes, that makes sense.
But then everything outside of brisket ribs and sausage usually takes about 4 to 6 months for it to catch on. And then it becomes discouraging. You're like,
it took
do they
forever
like it? Do
to get the
like
fried
it?
chicken to catch on. And now it like sells out every Sunday. You know, it took a while for people to notice the burger. And now people are like, I don't get a burger anywhere else. And it's funny because we're a barbecue joint, you know, and the burger came about to manage the brisket. You know, that was our trim. That was reinvesting that meat byproduct and making our own burgers to reduce cost, right? And actually the burger's great. And we had one of the key people in barbecue media come in, Daniel Vaughn. He writes for Texas Monthly. A couple years ago, he came in and I happened to be in the restaurant that day. So I gave him a burger on his plate to try it. He ends up talking to me afterward, and he has a good relationship with Leonard and I, and he's always been, you know, very kind about the things that we do or whatever. But he said, Abby, he's like, that's the best smash burger I've ever had. And I was like, Daniel, it's just a burger. Because I'm not like a smash burger person. Leonard loves smash burger. He's like, no, it's like perfectly salted. It's all these things. So when he was giving me this feedback, like that's kind of our route on everything. If it's not something that's going to be like so craveable and that people are just going to adore, because it has to be those iconic things that are nostalgic for people.
I would agree with that.
Then we don't do it.
What's the most expensive business mistake that you made?
HVAC, not replacing our HVAC when we built out Houston.
Or just the biggest mistake, maybe.
Most expensive is probably HVAC because it's a instead of recurring revenue, it's just a recurring expense for 8 years.
I know.
HVAC's always an issue.
But what's the biggest mistake we've made?
Yeah, maybe the biggest mistake too. Or you think that you made, looking back?
Probably, and there's still a lot of people that do this, was I didn't even really deep dive into it until I went to the packing plants and went to the farms and saw how much work went into, you know, raising those cows and going through that process and how brutal of a process it is. I think taking the time to gain the knowledge of all the work that goes into it before we even get, like, we're so used to going to the grocery store and just picking up something off the shelf and being like, the price is the price. Like, it is what it is. But people throw their arms up when gas prices go up. But they don't realize that the gas prices affect the feed, the cows, all the things. So when I started to really deep dive into all the nuts and bolts of everything that goes into barbecue before it even hits us, all of the trim, everything that can be repurposed, all the way down to, like I said, the trimming down the briskets, they got to be a certain shape and size for them to cook uniformly on the pit. We would throw away that excess trim. We would only use enough to make our sausage bars. There would be an excess of fat. Now we use all the fat and use it into, we grind it and cook it down into fry oil.
That was a big mistake that I think you're right. Like, so many restaurateurs are probably still making, like, for a long time, a lot of these organizations that write about or award restaurants or like the industry have categories for things like, an award for being a really green restaurant, an award for being like a zero waste restaurant. And it's cloaked in like environmentalism, right? Which is not wrong, but that doesn't resonate necessarily with all restaurant owners. So maybe you're not really thinking about it, but really from a business perspective, you have to try to do everything in your power to get as close to zero waste as possible.
Well, especially just the margin
for your business to actually be healthy and profitable. So I think that's I do think a lot of people do that.
And it makes you look like, it goes with any business. Then you start to look at like just that water bottle, for instance. It's like, how many, can I reuse that? Is there a different way I can use that? Is that the only purpose for that? And
how many menu items can one ingredient go into?
Yeah.
Right? How do you maximize that? But I would say, like, from my perspective, the biggest business mistake we ever made and continue to make, even though it's something that you're like growing out of over time, is we didn't build, we never really thought about like what we were going to grow into in the future. We thought about every day as it came. We thought about next week. So our infrastructure, whether that was hiring, whether that was, something like benefits, whether that was, equipment, our infrastructure has never been on the same trajectory as our business growth. And I would say that, from my perspective, was our biggest mistake, because one time we were talking about, I'm the risk taker in the relationship. And so I'm also somebody that, like, if I see something that needs to be done, I want to attack it right away. Whereas he's a little bit more like, well, yes, that has to be done, but we have these other 5 things too, and we need to prioritize. And I'll be like, rip the Band-Aid off and fix all of it so that it's off our plate and it's going to make everything run more smoothly. So I'm not worried about the investment, because that's going to come back faster. So we kind of view things differently like that. But we were having a conversation where I was like, we have to double down and invest in like XYZ. And I had this whole thing laid out for him about what I felt like we really needed to invest in to continue to build the infrastructure that we need, to support the weight of the company, because it's the two of us really supporting the weight of the company, and it's vastly outgrown us and it's outgrown our skill sets, and my pitch to him was like, Elon Musk is not sitting here being like, when we make enough money in third quarter, we're going to hire, buy, build, sell. I'm like, we have to think like him. We got to, do the sunk cost now. We'll figure it out, because at the end of the day, our approach has also always been, we are always going to figure it out come hell or high water, which is why I'm comfortable taking risks. But that would be, I think, from my perspective, our biggest mistake, because it's just constantly recurring.
That's what true entrepreneurs do. That's like the ones that make it are the ones that just always you have to figure it out. There's no other choice to keep feeding everybody, to keep making sure everybody, all the employees have a job.
It's hard to,
you have to figure it out. There's like, there's no other choice.
It's hard to pinpoint like the biggest like business decision. I like, if I probably asked you like, how many times did you buy something not realizing, like thinking about what you were going to grow into, like this podcast equipment that we were talking about earlier. You're like, Now you think of like, just get the best one because you know, like you're going to grow into it. Like that's the goal, obviously. And thinking about all the times previously that you were like, I just need this for right now. And just thinking in that moment of what it fixes, you don't realize that that is a big business decision that will affect you financially in the long haul, whether it's like just in that moment, that's the piece of equipment that I need, but you actually need the one that costs like
Double
$3,000 to $5,000 more. So you're not having to spend the money on repair, or grow, and end up buying another piece of equipment.
Self-financed entrepreneur, like we're all fighting the same battle, which is if you had your preference, you would do everything right. You would order the best of everything. You would, cross every T and dot every I, but you're dealing with pocket change and you're investing, just like you with the e-commerce company and like the inventory, Leonard, for so long, I was like, we're never going to be able to buy a house because your W-2 looks like you don't exist. Because even when we structured the business to where we were taking salaries, Leonard was putting his money back in the business. And I'm like, we don't do that anymore. But like you all do that.
I've been there 100 times.
Yeah, like you're using your pocket change to get to point A. It's like, and then you make enough at point A to then use it again to get to point B. So like it's kind of a catch-22 because you're like, well, if you could avoid it. But like most of us can't. It's more, I think, about take that hindsight from somebody else, and apply it and say, okay, I need this right now, but I need to go ahead and start preparing myself for the fact that I'm going to need this much sooner. That, stuff like that.
So you went from 2 people working at a very, very small shack of a restaurant, and now you have a bunch of people. What was the biggest hiring mistake that you think you made? You don't have to say their name.
We need another podcast for that. No. It's not a person. It's I think it's a mindset, and it goes back. We literally just had this conversation. Who were we having this with the other day? I can't remember, but the biggest mistake that we made was watching somebody come in and take on a role like being our general manager, for example. And they ran with it and they did it. And we were like, they're crushing it. Okay. That we need one manager for this store, and not realizing over time that we needed to add a second. Then there was a third, that we needed to bring somebody in-house in accounting. That was like the biggest hiring mistake. And it kind of goes back to that infrastructure. But when you're both workhorses, when you're owner operators, you forget very, very fast that nobody else works like you and that you're not allowed to expect them to work like you. And so we had this great manager years ago. He's part of the family, still very close with him. And he was like us. He could just go forever until one day he couldn't. And it wasn't fair for us to ask him to go forever. And he's like, man, I gotta see my kids. I got stuff going on, And so we started building out the team differently, but that took a long time to get right. And that is a daily maintenance thing. I wouldn't say that we even still have it perfect. You're always learning, you're always tweaking on that hiring matrix per revenue, per amount of people you have in the company, also layering the skill set, what you have and what you still need.
Have you ever hired somebody that probably wasn't qualified for the position you put them in, but ended up becoming one of the best people that work for you?
Yeah, a lot of them. Surprisingly.
Several. Reed was one of them. Yeah. And you experienced Reed the other day.
Awesome. Yeah, he's great.
And I was watching your videos and like, I'm like, man, I'm so proud of him and like the way he's grown and like the leadership. And
no, he's great.
It's why amazing. I asked him to do it and not Leonard. I mean, for so long.
He cooked ribs for graveyard shift for 3.5 years. He worked
overnight
from midnight to 9 a.m. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Overnights by himself.
Well, he definitely looked like a leader the day I was there. It was awesome.
And he is, he's a little bit different because we didn't hire him for something he wasn't unqualified for, but then became the best. We hired him for something so different, and then
he wanted to learn more and more and more.
He wanted to learn more, and we accidentally opened We never like really sat with him and said like, let's talk about your career here. It happened organically. It happened over time. And normally I would never let people come into the restaurant and have an experience that Leonard wasn't leading. And Reed was the first person about 3 or 4 years ago that I started tapping, because he could really do it. And now he asked me the other day, he's like, hey, is Leonard coming to this? And I was like, oh, I'll ask him if you want me to. And Leonard was going to come so that he could see you guys, but he ended up having a conflict with a meeting or whatever. But Reed just does it so great.
You came from the PR world. What's the main, I guess, marketing strategy for the business? Or, what is it, always word of mouth? Or how did you,
It's so
I
interesting.
guess, start marketing in different channels, if you did at all?
I think it was exposure,
Well, I
strategic
came from,
exposure.
yeah, it was very strategic. I literally was just at a conference talking about this where I was speaking on this exact subject as it relates to truth because I broke every rule of my own training. I came from I started in television and radio, and then I went, into major corporate hospitality brands in New York, and then I went into tech with Samsung. And so being in the New York matrix, like you're trained in advertising and marketing in such a different way. Like I probably already have a business school degree just from that like training, and that experience that I gained there with those companies. And when it came to truth, and I was really starting to help Leonard out, and we were at the point where he would actually take my feedback. It was really important that we earned everything organically. So I got on board with this idea because when Leonard first started, Texas Monthly has this list. It's super important. It comes out every 4 years, top 50 barbecue joints in the state. And, we've got, at one time, it was more than 10,000 barbecue joints in the state. It's probably like 15 or 20 now, right? So if you make that top 50, which is a project that is done by, 30 to 40 voters and editors that are part of the Texas Monthly organization. And it happens over the course of, 12 to 15 months where they fan out in regions across the state and they keep hitting, these barbecue joints. They keep testing them. It's not you stop by once and you're like, truth is it. Like you've had to earn that. And you don't know when it's happening at Secret Shop. So Leonard wanted to be on the list. He got into this, he had the passion for it, and he's like, I'm not doing it for the pennies I'm making. I'm not doing it. I love the barbecue, but like, I'm going to make something of this place. So he wanted to be on the list. Well, you don't get on the list, you get on the list through like the quality and the output of what you've provided, the experience that you've created. It's all very authentic. So when he got on the list the first time, he was very young and he got on the list very, very fast. And he didn't just get on the list in the top 50. He was listed in the top 10 for his first list. So I was like, okay, we can't be out there like advertising for people to come in. Like we have to build this machine of like word of mouth, getting to know Leonard. The one thing that I identified when I moved to Texas and watched Leonard every weekend while I was ringing up the register was people loved barbecue at Truth, yeah, but people loved Leonard more. They wanted to talk to him. They wanted to tell him that they had seen the article. They stopped us in HEB all the time. Hey, I see you're wearing that Truth hat. Like, are you the owner? Like people loved Leonard. And I was like, okay, we're not doing digital marketing. We're not doing Facebook marketing. We're not putting out ads anywhere. We didn't even put out ads to hire people. All I focused on was we're going to tell the story. And you've heard me talk about this. We're going to tell the story. And so I enlisted, strategic help with a really great PR firm out of New York. And I treated it the same way I treated my job at Samsung. I came in, I gave them the strategy, I gave them the pillars and the tent poles, and I said, here's our targets. Like, this is what I want you to go after. We educated them on barbecue, and we worked really hard to expose him because at the time, the barbecue space was getting very exciting with like fusion and different cultures coming in and making Texas barbecue their own because they've been raised in Texas, but they have a cultural background where barbecue was also important in their history. And so there was all this great new barbecue coming out, and we were traditional. We were kind of different, and even if you look at the Texas Monthly Top 50 list now, it reflects Texas. It reflects our cultural makeup. It reflects like all these people that have moved here, been raised here from different, ethnicities and, countries and backgrounds. And there's probably 10, 15 really like solidly true traditional barbecue restaurants like still on that list. And, staying core to that was a hard story to tell when there's really exciting things happening with like, brisket and, Viet Cajun and all this kind of stuff. So we went to events. We focused on the culinary side, the difficulty. We focused on the quality. And we just met people. And so that was the thing. And I only focused on like always on. And to this day, 10 years later, I do the same thing. You won't, somebody told us one time, like, you really need to put a billboard up so that they know that you're like right here off of I-10 and like right here at Heights. And I like looked at the guy and I was like, that is a good idea. But they know. They know. We worked so hard to say like, this is destination dining. I said to him several years ago, we want people to get out, and he just kind of referenced it. When you get off the plane, if you say barbecue, you're saying truth. That was my first brand brief, right? That was all I preached. And so I kept telling my PR team, I want to be in Charleston. I want to be in Nashville. I want to be in LA. I want to be in New York. I want him everywhere that you can put him.
Yeah, I think the PR team gave us the roadmap, but then we had to go and execute the work. So,
and then those people in all of those regions, Atlanta, Chicago, every single food festival we did, guess what? Houston is a travel hub for business.
Yeah.
They were getting off that plane. They were coming to the restaurant. They were dropping their suitcases and they were saying, hey man, I met you do you remember? We talked about my smoker. I met you at Atlanta Food and Wine. I sure do.
Yeah, there was not an event.
I sure do remember you.
I was too big or too small or above. I was like, we
were on the road like 8 months out of the year.
So just traditional.
It was just
grassroots.
Yeah. I think
shaking hands.
Mostly
meet him, eat the food.
It was networking, and still to this day, I think like that, the food always tastes that much better if anytime a customer will stop me or her in the building, we'll sit there and
we'll sit down with them, we hang out.
We'll because you want to be able to remember that experience, and that, like I said, I think
like
PR
old school restaurateurs kind of still do that, like medium Paco's and Galveston Paco like stands.
Yeah, because like people
there's a lot of old restaurateurs.
They want to feel.
They want to know people in your community. They want to know like
it's like Mattress Mac standing at the front of this building.
It's the exact
every
same.
single day, and like
they want to feel relatable. Like they.
And they want to know that they matter. Like a big thing internally for us was always like, we don't lose power at Truth, because we're on the fire station grid and HEB's across the street from us. Like, so we freeze, hurricane, flood, you name it. We don't lose power.
It's awesome.
So the big thing is we've never closed any of the, unless it happens to fall on a Monday, because we are closed on Mondays, but like we don't close. We're still serving,
Why on Monday?
You have to.
Is that like a prep day? I'm just curious.
It's prep day and the
day.
Longevity of the cooking and all of that.
It gives the guys.
It's kind of the way the schedule works.
Yeah, it gives the guys at least Sundays. They're not having to do a full cook day, so they're still coming in.
I figured
Mondays.
it. Yeah,
it's just like a breathing day.
So it's like we were always like, if the community supports us, we have to always be supporting the community, and we do that in such a variety of ways. But one of them is that gratitude of like, you care enough about eating here at Truth that you actually want to like meet one of us or talk to one of us. We're giving you the time. We're spending the time with you because for some reason you care about that. You know what I mean? And so we like to get to know these people, and we like to hear about, they want to talk to you about the other barbecue restaurants they've eaten at. They want to know what your favorite barbecue restaurants are. Have you eaten at that place in Seattle? Have you tried the one in Chicago? Like we know those people. Then you start ending up in these like barbecue chains where you can help them go experience somewhere else, where you can send them to Snow's and give them the blueprint for like how to have that classic experience at Snow's in Lexington. So everything we did, and still to this day do, is grassroots. And we have a lot of, now that we're larger, and we have a lot of, partners that help us with things from content creation to the website to whatever, PR. They want us to do more. be on TikTok, have billboards, do this, do that. And I break all of my own rules and we're pretty firm. And I'm like, I'm not sending superfluous emails. I send 4 a year. I don't want to be on TikTok. I'm already on TikTok. We're there. We're talked about. It's huge. I don't want to put up a billboard. We don't want to do t-shirt drops because we lose the brand equity when we do that, and I have all these very smart people sitting around me that I've worked with my whole career saying, Abbie, why? We don't understand. And the why today is because what we do today really, really works.
Yeah, and it was staying true to like
it's very authentic
from the beginning and not keeping up with the Joneses, I would say.
It's also not your personality. That was the other thing. It's not Leonard's personality to like try to splash him across something, and make him into like a celebrity chef. That was never going to work.
And then I know recently, I don't know what year it was now, it hasn't been that long, where Michelin finally came to Texas, right?
Yeah, 24.
It's 24. Okay. Yeah, I knew it was recent.
Yeah.
And I think that how many did they give out? How many, I guess, Michelin stars?
So they gave out, I don't know how many Michelin stars they gave out across Texas. Since Houston hosted the ceremony for the whole state both years. We were really lucky in that we were awarded a Michelin Bib Gourmand 2 years in a row, and their Bib Gourmand status. So they have a star status, and there's that's generally related to fine dining, or it's related to something that's like really pushing the boundaries. So they did give 4 stars to 4 barbecue restaurants that are, back to what we're talking about, very different than what we do. And we're very, very traditional. They're pushing the boundaries. They're doing very different things in barbecue. We got a Bib Gourmand, and that designation is for restaurants that are meeting, excellence in service, excellence in experience, excellence in culinary, and there's a price point. I want to say that it can't go like above $60. So that Bib Gourmand designation is important because you're talking about being able to hit the majority of restaurant diners with a recommendation that they can afford, as opposed to like, you have these major behemoth institutions like March, who has the most beautiful dining experience you've ever had, and it's coarse and it's gorgeous, and but it might not be in reach for a great many diners because of what you really have to charge to create that experience for them.
Me and Gentry eat out a lot, and we're not the whole 7-course
we aren't either.
Michelin star thing, and we like
intense.
eating out with people, and man, by the end you're like, I'm kind of ready. I'm really ready to go. This is really, it's just not our thing. And then the food is just, it's good, but it's just different. I don't know.
It's very different. It's kind of like going to a museum.
It's like
watching kitchen museum,
it's
right?
Yeah,
like
I get it. It's just not for us. And we like to eat out. It's just, we've been to a bunch in San Francisco. We've been to, a couple that were here. Like, it just, every time you go, I'm not going to say we regret it, but by the end, we're kind of like,
it's such a different experience. And I think it's so built up that you expect
we like to go to bed
different.
At 9:30.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just like,
we're the same way.
It's like,
we like places that are like ours. We like, hole in the walls, local joints, places with history. We like places that are mom and pop. I feel like new generation owner operator.
Houston traditionally has been pretty good about the restaurants that do really well weren't the chain restaurants.
That's right. Yeah. We're a big community of independent restaurants.
People don't support like those big chains that come in. I mean,
they support
I'm sure
the
they
local ones, right?
I'm sure
like
they
if
still
you're
do
talking
okay.
about Levi Good or Pappas,
but I'm
all
saying
loyal
like
to
a big,
that.
The bigger ones,
like a nationwide chain that has this like very, very big name, and they come in and say, oh, the only one in Houston. And I don't know, it's just not like the traditional
not like
Houston
that
crowd.
Here. I mean, I think the Houston community watches the Houston restaurant community.
Yeah.
And I think, we've got some really great food media right now, like Bao over at the Chronicle, that are working so hard to highlight all these different pockets in Houston that are serving amazing food. That's different, I think, than a lot of cities.
Every time I travel, I'm pretty disappointed because we're like, Houston just has so much diversity, but so many good restaurants. Not like 4 or 6. It's like there's so many. And so me and Gentry travel and we're like, it's all
We
right.
base our
Like
travel
we're
around
kind of
eating now.
Yeah, and so do we. Gentry's a big foodie, so she's like, oh, we can go here, we can go here, we
Yeah.
can go here. And it's still not as good as Houston. I don't know if it's just there's that many good restaurants here, but we're always let down a little bit. Like not, and there's still some good
I think
places,
it's the
but there's
trend
not,
of like the bi-coastals always getting all the credit, and then you go.
but there
I hope nobody from San Francisco listens to this,
I
but
was literally
unpopular opinion is San
there was too
Francisco.
many, like we didn't like anything. there
It
really
doesn't
wasn't
hit
great.
us the way it hits some people, right? And like we really struggle to eat in that town, whereas
we went
don't
to
here,
the
we
month,
don't in New
the
York.
couple weeks that we stayed there a long time ago. We went to all those Michelins, and we were like, not one time we're like, man, that was amazing. I don't know, it was okay.
But I think also the culture is like your socks are blown off when you have something simple
that you're not expecting, I think.
that is so good that you're like, I didn't even know a sandwich could taste that good.
Yeah, we have a lot of good restaurants here. Pretty much in every cuisine, every culture. Like, I mean, there's one in every single category. It's like amazing. Outside of the restaurant, I mean, y'all work together, y'all live together. What's the biggest thing you learn about being partners and being married? Like business partners and being married.
Business partners, I'm very type A. I'm very authoritative. I make decisions relatively easily. So I don't really have like a lot of patience, and I don't have a lot of breaks. You know what I mean? I'm like all gas, all the time. So for me, I would say like in our marriage and in our working relationship, it's definitely been, a journey of learning that like we are not the same. We don't process the same. We don't receive the same. I cannot be fully the way I am without respect to like, how is this going to go over with Leonard? What is the best path forward? And also like, what is even his opinion on the matter? Because I am naturally a steamroller.
Gentry.
And
me, that's how she is. She's like
learning that back and forth and how we can like, and I do still steamroll sometimes because you are who you are, but like, that was my thing. It's like patience and like learning like what he responds to and works with best, I think was the biggest change from my perspective that made it work. Right.
Yeah.
And we did stop. There was a point where we really started to make a conscious effort to like not talk about work at home. We still do, but like it's significantly reduced.
Yeah. I think when we kind of defined our own roles of where we were good, our pros and cons for both of us. So what she was better at, what I was better at, what I was weak at, what she was weak at, and like filling those gaps. That definitely helped. And then try not to talk about work when we get to the house, I would say. But I know that we have a pretty strong marriage because when we do fight, it is probably based off of the business. So it's not a true...
But it's also fast. They say it's not about like if you fight or how you fight. I mean, I think there is a how you fight aspect, but it's how you like how quickly you recover. And I think like even when we have heated debate,
I would say it's a disagreement, and then we both go back and look at it and be like, "Oh, that's what they were saying. That makes sense." And then we both learn from it. And then
so, what is the biggest disagreement that you had about the business?
About the business,
one of the major ones.
I think we both overanalyze every single step. So we're both presenting like 15 steps to each other of how something can go wrong. And
I think our biggest disagreement over the business has probably been leadership style
and paint colors.
That was a really big one 9 years ago.
I just hire Laura for everything now. I don't even want to even when Gentry's talking about it, I was like, unless it gets too crazy, I don't even want to know. Just figure it out. That stresses me out.
Well, we're both creatives, right? So I am not creating art on a plate. In fact, when Leonard came into my life, and I was once a really good cook, I once cooked the way Gentry did, like making fun dishes and trying new things out. I used to cook dinner for him almost every night when we were super poor. I don't touch anything in my kitchen. I will design him a kitchen. I will make it beautiful because I have one thing in mind, which is don't ever make me go in there anymore. But we are both super creative people, and mine is through like, design and interiors and stuff like that. But I think, certain things like we both have such strong opinions on. one of the early days one was I felt that the location in Houston coming out of Brenham should evoke something that felt a lot like Houston, and it should evoke something that felt a lot like Leonard. And Leonard's like always in all black. He's quiet, he's reserved. He's kind of confident. There's a little air of mystery to him because he doesn't talk a whole lot, and people are always kind of trying to figure him out. So I was like, this building's got to be black. The building in Brenham, the outside is that, traditional like countryside brick red, and the inside is like Tiffany blue, very, very round toppy. Right. And it made sense for that location. It made sense for like where he was in his journey, how that building was decorated, the whole thing, and the vibe that we were putting out there. But I was like, man, we're going to Houston. We got to keep that grit. We got to keep those beat up tables. That was super important to him. We got to keep, the unpolished aspect of who we are. That was a defining part of Truth and the whole kind of brand fabric, even though he didn't know that, before I put a moniker to it. But I was like, this building needs to be black, outside, inside. And he was like, oh, my dead body. He did not want it to be black. And then there's a cinder block wall, and you've seen it. Those neon signs are hanging on it. And he really wanted the cinder block exposed. And I was like, that looks terrible. That looks horrendous. It looks unfinished. Well, Shawn, you were in the business last week. What color is the building?
I don't even remember.
It's black. And the inside is black.
Yeah, I knew the outside was.
But
I don't remember the inside.
But that cinder block wall is like still exposed. And I remember we were in there. We're like fighting in front of our GC. Josh Wiseman from Construction Concepts is in there. Like we're like having a knockdown drag out in front of our GC about this paint. And he's so mad at me. That was like early days of very big.
They pulled down the drywall off the wall, and all this CMU was exposed of like all the previous businesses that had painted over it. So it was like all patinaed, and I was like, oh, it's gorgeous. And she was like, it looks like disgusting.
Hated it.
And then like a couple months ago, some customer was like, did you guys paint this? And I was like, no, why do you ask? And he was like, it's beautiful. And I was like, yeah, it is.
He's like,
yeah. Yeah.
It happens. It happens more often than you think. People comment on that wall a lot.
Let me go ahead and record this. Can you say that again?
But in my defense, I'd like to say that when Allison Cook reviewed us for the Chronicle after we opened, she said it was the most beautiful barbecue restaurant she'd ever been in. So we both got a win out of that one. But that was it's so funny. It's so funny. It was such a silly thing, but it was such a blowout. But I think now we mostly, I don't know that we disagree about leadership style, but our debate always centers on leadership because we lead in two different ways. I over communicate, I am direct, and I really hold people accountable.
I think you and Gentry are the same person.
And Leonard doesn't not hold people accountable, but
I think Leonard
gives rope, gives rope, gives rope.
I think Leonard and I are the same person.
Yeah, you guys are super similar. Like he gives a lot of rope, and then there's going to be a point where that rope is going to snap, and his goodwill is gone. And I'm like,
kind of how
I told you, you should have put it in writing.
It's almost my exact thing that I do all the time. I don't know. I just want, I don't know. I want people to succeed, and
there's no right answer.
Even though I know, but sometimes even when I know in my gut and I let it go too long, I mean, it's probably one of my things that I
and
haven't
he's the same way. Like
been great at.
You want to give everybody the opportunity.
I know, and most of the time, it just.
But sometimes they just need like. This is the hard thing about business is you got to keep all these boundaries. You got to keep all these emotions outside of it. But like sometimes they just need parenting. Your organization needs parenting and stewardship. And sometimes you do have to be tough and say, hey, the deadline for this was this date and you agreed to it. And so now there's a consequence because you haven't, done the steps to get to where
I think if you do communicate it in the right way, it's definitely a lot better.
Well, those were other fights we had.
It's
like
easier
learning
for
how
her
to
because her communication is very black and white. It's like very black and white. So if it doesn't work out, she communicated it to the best of her ability, and it was communicated very clearly. Me, I am like, I'll walk you through it. I will do it with you. I know you can do it. I've shown you how to do it. And then if they can't meet the moment, I'm like, 6 months later, I'm like, man, did I let them down? Did I not show them properly? Did I not spend enough time with them?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, did you communicate it from point A to point B and make it clear? I'm like, I think I did. And I literally put my hands on their hands and showed them. So I always struggle with the aftermath of it, of like not giving enough, I think.
Because
So
we've
that's
learned
hard.
that like the hard balance and where we've disagreed and like kind of learned through it and then changed the organization because of the result of our disagreements is you have to do both. I'm not a trainer. I'm not a like soft and cuddly, I'm going to like walk you through this. I'm looking for self-motivated, ambitious, can really think for yourself. You can think independently. I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to give you great written directions. I'm going to give you a roadmap and I'm going to send you on your way. Not on your first day, but if you've been in the company for a good while, like I should be able to trust you with this. Leonard is a great like trainer, mentor, he's like the gentle giant. And so he does that, but really they have to have both. They have to have the written, the roadmap, the setting the stage and dissertation of like, here's what I'm going to want you to do. Here's what the project is. And then they do have to have somebody come in and say, let me help you get started. Let me show you how. But after that, my fuse gets short when we do invest so much of that effort and we just don't move the ball down the field.
I think that's every business stuff. Hey, everyone, real quick, I just want to let you know this podcast is 100% independent. No ads, no sponsors, just real. If you're finding value in whatever we're doing here, the biggest help that you can give us is hitting subscribe and sharing this with someone who you think needs to hear it or someone that it will provide value to. That's how we continue to grow. And if you did that, I would really appreciate it. Leonard, what's something that Abbie does behind the scenes that most people never see?
Everything. Strategically, probably delegating tasks, communicating, and making sure that they're getting executed properly behind the scenes. It's like, I don't know, everything that's happening behind the curtain at a play, I would say. There's so many moving parts that are behind just the service aspect and the cooking aspect of the restaurant that goes on that a lot of people don't see until she actually starts talking about, and they're like, oh, that's how the restaurant got to where it is. It wasn't just the food. Like the food can only get you so far. Like the story can only get you so far. You got to keep that momentum, and the only way to keep that momentum is everything that's happening in the background, I would say, for the most part.
Yeah, and it's hospitality. You're everybody's got to be on their A game.
As big of a lift, if not more, than the food and the customer part of it.
What do you think? Something that Leonard, you think
that nobody sees?
Maybe that he deserves more credit than he gets.
Well, there's a running joke about the fact that I probably love my husband too much. I think, and so, tempered this answer with that. I've often felt that Leonard deserves more credit than he gets. And I really say that delicately because he is a very recognized and very awarded pitmaster. And we're lucky to even say that considering the saturation of this industry and where we are, right? I think the thing that he doesn't get enough recognition, and again, I'm saying this so delicately because Leonard gets a lot of recognition, and I don't want somebody to think that we don't appreciate it and aren't grateful for it. But I think the thing that people have come to expect versus appreciate is what it takes to be consistent in a small roadside joint like Truth BBQ Brenham that's open 4 days a week, that does, actually, I'm not going to count the briskets out, but what it takes to do it at that volume consistently, managing that customer service experience, creating this moment that people want to, preserve on Instagram or preserve through purchasing something or just like preach, like you got to go to this place, is incredibly different than what it takes to do that exact same thing at our Houston location down the street. You're talking about a 12x variable across the board. You're talking about going from really honing 3 or 4 people into the sharpest knives in your toolkit and making them experts at what they do to trying to apply that to a team of, on any given day, 72 to 75. You're talking about having to steer a ship of, 5 independent, creative, strategic senior leaders, managers, corporate office people. Everybody has a hand in it now. Everybody has a hand in what we do at Truth BBQ, and they have a piece of skin in the game, and they got a little stake in our success, and they all have their own things. So where I think it maybe is not recognized as easily as that consistency and that quality, and that the same today as it was 5 years ago, as it was 10 years ago, and still meeting the moment for these, awarding institutions and food media with the volume we're doing is insanity. It's insane.
I don't think
we shouldn't be able to still do that.
I don't think it's about accolades and credit. It's more about what was the first company that you started? We talked about it at dinner.
I founded a company, but I bought into a fitness center. But then the first company I founded was an e-commerce company. We were buying and reselling things.
The e-commerce, but that one grew, right?
Pretty big, yeah.
Pretty big.
Yeah.
So nobody really talks about all the pain points of the growing part of it and the credit of how much I think probably the overtime hours that you worked in between.
Really tough. Yeah. I mean, that's the reason Gentry broke up with me.
Yeah. And that's the only thing that you really want them to acknowledge, probably.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, you got a new car. Like, well, yeah, the business grew.
It's like the expectation that you're supposed to
they
still
noticed
have that.
They noticed the accolades and all the stuff along the way, but what you really want credit was for all the work that you put in to get that.
When you slept on the cot.
Yeah.
Outside of, of
I will
the shack.
say I should amend that, because the one person that has said that to me over the years, the last Texas Monthly List was 3 years or 2 years?
2 years.
So for 10 years, we've been in the top 10, which is a insane feat. But rankings move and new players come up, and people are taking crowns, and that's what's supposed to happen, right? So we were, what are we right now? Number 9? We're number 9.
10,
so
3, 9, yeah.
Some people might think that you've dropped. We're happy to still be in the conversation because other players are coming in, and LeBron can't be at the top forever, right? We're not LeBron, but you understand the analogy. But one of the first people that ever wrote about Leonard, 2 guys, Andrew and Brian from Tales from the Pits, they're the first people that ever wrote about Leonard back in 2014. And they had this blog, and they were Texas barbecue.
Treasure Hunt.
I was leaving out treasure. Very small readership, but cool guys, really watching what was going on in the industry. And they were like, man, if anybody's reading this and you're serious about barbecue, and you got on board with the Aaron Franklin movement, you need to watch what this kid's going to do. So they've been big supporters and friends for a very long time, and right when that last list came out, and, we were at number 9, as opposed to number 3, number 4, staying in that kind of same area. I think they thought we're going to console you a little bit. We're fine. We're number 9 while also achieving a Michelin Bib Gourmand, while also doing some other things. We're just excited to be in the conversation. We're thrilled. But Andrew had said to be 10 years in and doing it at this level, that you're still in this game, you're still in the top 10, you're still considered, in this space, this elite space where you're considered, wow. And I think that's the one person that I can think of over all the years that was back there from the cot sleeping days, knew the whole thing, and said, hey, you're still doing this. This is crazy. You should be so proud. I think that's the thing that, you don't really need the pat on the back for it, but
I think a lot of people,
you sacrifice a lot. So every now and again, you want somebody to say I see what you're doing.
Yeah. Instead of being
I see that you didn't take your ball and go home.
It's so amazing that you got that award. Sometimes you just want to hear or be asked, how fucking hard was it to get X? And that part be acknowledged, I think.
I don't think people understand how much stress and how hard it is.
Yeah.
They only see the end result, especially now with social media and the way media is now, which is social media. You only see kind of the end result of of somebody's, and I know how hard it is, but a lot of normal people don't know how hard it is.
So they just
The
think it's
sacrifice
natural.
is lost on them.
So when we're talking about Brenham to Houston, it's like, oh, yeah, they're like, yeah, it's the same thing, but it's not. It's not the same thing. It's so much bigger. It's like when you went from the e-commerce and how much it grew in between. You're like, they're like, yeah, but it's the original business, but you're like, it's not at all. It's not. There was so much pain that went into the
pain.
Yeah.
I think the trap, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have to feel this way. I know a lot of, we're friends with so many people in the industry, so many restaurants that, owners, operators, even management teams that are side by side with us fighting these battles in their own spaces we support, spaces we, cheer on from afar. It's a very tight-knit community. And I think what's not talked about is like, it's not the sacrifice of the time. It's not the sacrifice of the sleep. It's not even the sacrifice of the money. It's the personal sacrifice. There are things you're going to give up in your life, things that you would never consider giving up in your life. Things that if somebody told you at the start of your entrepreneurship journey that, well, you're going to have to take that one off your wish list. If you're going to do this, that's not happening. If you knew that, you would say, oh, no, we're going to do it. I think that's the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs just want to be able to talk about or want to hear somebody say, I see what you gave up to make this happen. And like, we just appreciate you being here. We appreciate you serving barbecue or having this business or being the bike shop in our neighborhood or like whatever it is, I think that's the thing. Everybody struggles with that.
Yeah.
Being seen as a human.
Yeah.
Not a business.
If I asked you point blank, like out of all the businesses that you started, no matter how successful all of them were, if I would go back in time and be like, would you do it if you had to sacrifice X, Y, and Z, you'd probably be like, no, not a chance. Like if I presented it like that. And a lot of people don't think of it like that. Like they think that it just naturally happened, but there's so many sacrifices along the way that if you were presented from the get-go, you'd probably be like,
Or they think that the trade-off of like success, whatever that looks like to somebody, whether it's, money or vacation or car or whatnot, is that you would trade that, right? You would trade one of these things. But I think the human element is like people want to be successful at something they care about. Success means a variety of different things to different people. You just want the validation of like, you do something really well. And it's seen, it's noticed. But like if you were to, like Leonard's saying, pick something you want so bad and take it off the board so that you can get over here to that, you'd be like, well, I don't know if maybe success is so important. It's kind of going back to that same debate about where college versus real world experience and being able to build something for yourself comes into play. Do you want to spend $100,000 on college if I can't guarantee you that you're going to walk into a $100,000 a year job? You might be like, well, now that you say that, I don't think so. I think I might want to do something else. So that's the interesting part of like the battle, to be in the fight as a business owner consistently.
What do the next 5-10 years look like?
Trying to get off of that hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think that changes daily for
being
us.
smarter and like trying to, it's hard because you find I think a space, like a safe space of like, it's repetition, like, what you're good at and you feel comfortable. So like you feel fulfilled with it, but you can't do that for forever because it creates burnout. So being able to balance that and find that and then move on to whatever the next thing is. And it's more so, I think probably the next 5 to 10 years is more so, where do you draw that line of finding peace versus, going on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I mean,
I think people expect us to say scaling.
Yeah.
I think people expect us to say like, well, we got 5 truths planned, and certainly that opportunity exists, but I think that we've chosen a hard industry and we've been in the space long enough to say like, well, what do you really need to be happy? And on the flip side of that, to afford that happiness, because life has to be paid for, what do you need to maintain that? And I think that's what's, really providing that kind of roadmap and outlook for where we're going to take the business. Do we need 10 truths? No. We've got friends that have 10, 15, and they're like, you don't want this crazy. And we know what the crazy is with what we have here. So we don't need 10 truths. Do we have different interests? We do. Is the business growing in different ways that have viable like revenue streams that we're going to, pursue? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
But it's all in the service of like, how do you do more with less?
Yeah. And balancing that out. Like,
it's not in the service of let's put one in every metropolitan area. And we'd have to repeat the recipe, right? And Leonard and I can't repeat the recipe for 5 or 10 years at each location to get, you know what I mean? It's not going to work that way. So it's growing the business in a way that is balanced to get against, the life we want to lead, because we've sacrificed a lot of that life to get here. And now we do want to go on vacations, and we do want weekends off, and, we do want to see our families and travel more and all the things. So
yeah,
it's growing the business, but it's probably not in the way people think. And it's probably a lot slower and a lot more conservative than people would think. You know what I mean?
I mean, a lot of problems come when you have, 20
More money, more
restaurants, 30,
problems.
30 restaurants. I mean, it's a whole nother set of problems for sure.
Well, David Chang said something, at the end of COVID. He was being interviewed, and he was like, COVID taught every restaurateur in the world that you can't just rely on your restaurant, and never should you again. And he was like, even my company, and so I'm not doing that. I'm diversifying everything. And so I would say like 3.5 years ago.
Although I don't think the same thing would happen.
I don't think it's about
people
preparing
would
for another
riot if they
like
tried to shut
that.
down the country again.
I think he was just saying more like restaurants are so. I had this conversation recently. I said, tell me a place where you do everything that you do in your home, but not at your home. Actually, I'm trying to remember if I had this conversation with you and Gentry. It might have been that night at dinner. It's restaurants.
Yeah.
You cry in a restaurant, you grieve, you get engaged, you celebrate birthdays and Mother's Day and holidays, you meet your friends, you hang out, you relax, you get me time. Like, you do everything in a restaurant that you do in your home. I think at the time when David Chang gave that interview, he was definitely talking about like batten down the hatches and we got to prepare because we were all caught off guard. Of course he was. But I think the lesson that we took away from it is over the years, since barbecue has had this kind of cultural explosion, not just in Texas, but across the US, us, just like a lot of our friends and colleagues in the space, have been approached almost nonstop with expansion opportunities. Leonard and I could be in 15 states right now, and none of it on our own dime if we really wanted to. And we kept turning it down and turning it down. We never felt like it was right for us. And we got to a point like 3.5 years ago where I was like, man, we keep kind of like going on to the bigger thing. We keep getting these opportunities and doing them, but like, it's exhausting. It's great when we get to the finish line, but then we got to maintain it, and it's exhausting. And that was 3 or 4 years ago. It's still just the two of us. And so I had gotten really curious. We'd been talking about expansion for a really long time. We'd been talking about a third location. And I had gotten really curious about, but what if we didn't? What if we just doubled down on Houston? I'm like, we're not serving all of Houston. What if we just continued to build what we're building in Houston? And I think that was, you didn't ask this question, but I think that was the smartest business decision we ever made, was to continually look at the restaurant and say,
because we're still learning on the day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Do you add an extra hour? Do you add the fried chicken?
Yeah.
Do you give the people a burger? Do you do the rodeo party every year, which was not something that we were doing? That was so smart for us. And so we started to apply that to everything. We just bought a new house, same footprint, very similar layout, probably just the paint colors changed. We bought the house because we were like, how do we do more with like the same, more with less? Well, we really just needed a big yard for our dogs, So I think our ethos in like the business planning, the personal planning, and like maintaining what we've got in Houston and in Brenham, and that was kind of where the Texans partnership came from. It was like, just do more of what we're doing. There's a ton of growth there that doesn't take the human capital that it requires for us to go outside of the nest and go build another location, even though that is on deck for us, but it would probably be our last location, you know?
Yeah, it's difficult. You always want to grow, but you see so many places that grow a little too fast. And there's so many times, like, we look back 3 months, we look back 6 months, we look back a year, like, wow, I can't believe we learned that. I can't believe it. Like, if we would have went and opened another restaurant, we would have had to, learn that lesson X, 2X, 3X, whatever that
Sacrifice,
is.
lose money, fail somewhere. I mean, we fail every day, but like there's failures that you can mitigate, you control, you can pivot and learn from. And then there's failure, like the growing too fast, like that happens a lot in our industry.
Oh, yeah, a
right?
ton.
You know,
Yeah.
you
Or
strike
you
gold with a
lose
great
you lose
concept.
quality, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's really hard to
That's our biggest
scale
fear.
restaurants. Yeah.
That's our biggest fear. So like people didn't really understand it, but we were like, if we can't do it like this, we can't do it. We won't do it. We won't do it. That was the rule.
Yeah. It's a difficult decision. Always presented every day.
10 years, I hope our senior leadership team is running our company. That's what we're building them for. I've got my director of finance's career mapped out. I've got Reed's career mapped out. Like I tell them all the time, I have goals for you. I want you to have a piece of this pie. I hope that's where we're at in 10 years, maybe sooner.
Yeah. We more so look at it now, especially of how do we create growth for people internally that we want to be with for 20 years, 25 years. It's so exhausting to have to retrain somebody, help them understand you over and over and over again.
It's also the only way to, as an owner, to step away is have really key leadership. And
it's the only way to share equity, right? And that's so important. That's a conversation that the longer your business goes on, that one of our mentors and great friends, Pat Martin, he's out of Tennessee. He's very smart. He's got 13 barbecue joints, plus burger concept, plus breakfast concept. Super smart. He tells us all the failures he had and all the successes he had. And, these are the conversations that we have to think about now so that we can get there, so that we can keep that great talent retained, because that's difficult in our world. It's hard for hospitality to, create longevity in one company for a really talented candidate, so you have to work really hard to start building those models out. And that requires not killing your brand by scaling too fast.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate y'all coming on.
Sorry we took so much of your time.
That, in a nutshell, that is the difference between Leonard and I. I'm like, this is great. We can go forever. He's
I know,
like,
actually,
oh,
me
I feel
too.
bad. It was fun.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. Thank you.